Hello everyone, a very good evening and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to another session on internal security. So in yesterday's class, we had started with Northeast insurgency. We covered concepts of Northeast insurgency and we understood the common factors that contribute to so many insurgent movements in Northeast India. So today, we shall have a state-wise discussion. We will start with Nagaland and we shall understand the root cause of insurgency in Nagaland. We will examine the Naga insurgency in complete detail. So I hope you guys have revised the general factors in Northeast India which have contributed to the rise of so many insurgent movements. Right? We have covered this in detail yesterday. So today I would like to take forward the discussion and examine each insurgency separately in a state-wise order. So let's start with Nagaland and the Naga insurgency, as it is the first insurgency to be witnessed in India. The first insurgent movement. It broke out even before India's independence. Right before India became independent, Naga insurgents had declared a war, a separatist war against the Indian state. So this movement has represented a formidable threat for India. 75 years later, it still represents a threat for India, and we still haven't resolved the Naga insurgency. So we need to understand the root cause, what contributed to the rise of this separatist insurgent movement. How did it spread? What kind of support did the insurgent movement enjoy? And how has India tackled this threat? Right? So this story begins in colonial India. To understand Naga insurgency, we have to go back to the British era because that is where the root cause lies. The Nagas, the Naga ethnic group, is a very large ethnic group. Is that clear? Within Nagas, there are many clans. There are sub-ethnic groups within the Naga community. And Nagas are not just found in Nagaland. They're not just found in today's Nagaland. They're found in other parts of the region as well. Apart from Nagaland, you can find subgroups of Nagas even in Assam, in Manipur, as well as in Arunachal Pradesh and in some parts of Mizoram. So across several states in Northeast India, Naga groups can be found. And they're not just found in India, they're found in neighboring Myanmar as well. Across the border, even in Myanmar, there are few subgroups of Nagas. So collectively, all these sub-ethnic groups, they form the Naga community, right? Predominantly, they are found in today's Nagaland, but they are distributed across this region. So if you look at pre-independent India, the Naga areas, they were all part of the large province of Assam and the Northeast Frontier Agency. These areas were part of Assam and Northeast Frontier Agency. So this is where the Naga community was found, right? Both in India and as well as in Burma as well. The Nagas, if you look at their ethnic profile, if you look at the indigenous community, you will notice that they are a martial tribe. Just like most of the indigenous communities, the Nagas were known for their martial skills. We can say that they were known for their martial skills because it would be incorrect to call the Nagas a tribe. All right, Nagas are an ethnic group. They are known for their martial skills, that is, fighting skills. They specialize in guerrilla warfare, in jungle warfare. Historically, they have fought against various other rival groups to protect their interests in the forests of Northeast India. So these war fighting skills of the Nagas, that too in jungles, their skills in ambush attacks, their skills in launching guerrilla attacks, were noticed by the British, and they employed the skills during the First World War and also during the Second World War. They essentially used Naga members who were known for their guerrilla and war fighting skills, and they recruited them to fight for the British Indian troops as part of their World War efforts. So in 1918, a group of Naga soldiers who fought for the British, they would form the first club or organization called the Naga Club. The Naga Club would be a representative organization of some of the Naga commandos who had fought for the British during First World War. And after they came back from the war, right, they returned with a lot of experience and wartime knowledge. Now that they had traveled outside the region, fought in different parts of the world, right, they had seen different political systems. They had seen how nation states are formed and how cultural identities give rise to different national identities. They saw in Europe that people who speak a certain language will have a country of their own. People who belong to a certain ethnic group or a certain race will have a separate country of their own. So this wartime experience and knowledge motivated some of the leaders of Naga Club to start thinking on nationalistic lines. They started thinking that they have a distinct identity. As a group, the Nagas have a distinct political ethnic identity, and they started realizing that they should fight for it. They need to represent their demands and form a separate state, a separate country to protect the Naga community and their rights and their culture. So this would lead the members of Naga Club to submit their demands to the Simon Commission, which would visit India in 1929. You guys would have studied in polity and in modern history that in 1919, the Government of India Act, or the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, it provided for a review commission which would visit India one decade later to evaluate the functioning of the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. So according to the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms of 1919, the Simon Commission visited India in 1929 and met with all the stakeholders in the country to generate their concerns and grievances. So as the Simon Commission was touring India and meeting different stakeholders, leaders of Naga Club, who were all former soldiers who had fought for British India, they officially raised their demand. They represented their demand in front of the British, pointing out that Nagas are a distinct community, a distinct ethnic group. They have a rich history behind them, right? They would highlight their cultural distinction. They would highlight how the Naga people were different from other communities in the region and also across India. So by pointing out the distinctions and differences, the Nagas sought a separate state for themselves. As India's freedom struggle was gaining momentum, right, they knew that India was about to gain independence. It was only a matter of time. So Nagas represented before the British. They raised their demand and concern in front of the Simon Commission, and officially they submitted a memorandum asking for the Naga areas to be left alone if India were ever granted independence. Is that clear? Their demand was very simple. If India is given independence, if the British are leaving the region, their demand was the Naga areas, all the Naga areas stretching from India to Burma, these areas should be kept separate from India. They should be granted independence to form a separate state, which they would refer to as Naga Lim or Greater Naga Land. Is that clear? So all the Naga areas from Assam to today's Nagaland to Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh and Myanmar, they wanted all these Naga areas to be kept separate from India, and they wanted to form a separate nation state, an independent nation state, which would be called Nagalim or Greater Nagaland. So this demand was indeed encouraged by the British. The British, in fact, they saw this as a return favor when they employed Naga soldiers to fight on behalf of British India during First World War. Right? Obviously, there would be an expectation from the Nagas as well to return a favor from the British authorities. So given that the Nagas had fought during the First World War, some half-hearted promises were made by the British that we'll look into your demand, that we'll address this demand. In a way, a subtle encouragement was given to the idea that Nagas can have their separate country. Then came the Second World War. The Second World War, by which time the Naga Club had transformed into the NNC, Naga National Council. With more political awareness, the Naga Club had now transformed into a much bigger and well-structured organization, a political organization called NNC, the Naga National Council. So even in the Second World War, Naga soldiers fought on behalf of British India. They would use their guerrilla fighting skills to fight for British India in different parts of the world. So they would come back not just with political and geopolitical knowledge, they came back with better military skills and strategies as well. So after coming back from the Second World War, the NNC reiterated the demand for Nagaland to be formed as a separate country. Because by 1946, by the time the Second World War ended, Britain was declining as a global power. It was imminent that British colonies would become independent. Right? India's freedom struggle had reached its pinnacle, and it was only a matter of time before India got its independence. So at this crucial juncture, the NNC, which acted as the representative of the Nagas, the political representative, raised a very strong pitch, a very strong demand, calling for Naga areas to be left alone, to be kept separate from India. Now the British, they consulted with the Indian leaders, right, with the Indian National Congress. Obviously, these demands were not acceptable to the Indian leaders. Granting independence to different territories, depending on race, ethnicity, religion, caste, that would simply divide the country and the whole concept of India would fail. Even before independence, the concept of an Indian Union would collapse because similar demands existed in different parts of the country. So meeting one demand would create a wrong precedent. It would set a wrong example, and similar demands would come up and they would raise a stronger pitch for independence from India. So Indian leaders, they rejected this demand at any cost. It was unacceptable to the Indian National Congress to allow any region to break away. So the British now, who were caught in between, the Indian leaders and the NNC, they tried to strike a middle ground. They worked out an agreement called Akbar-Hydari Agreement, or the 9-point agreement. Akbar Hydari was the governor of Assam, the British governor. All right. And interestingly, he's the grandfather of Bollywood actress Aditi Rao Hydari. All right. So Akbar Hydari, who was the governor, would meet with NNC leaders on behalf of the British, and he negotiated a settlement. He worked out a middle ground, and some of the leaders of NNC agreed to these 9 points. Few leaders of NNC, especially the more moderate ones, who only believed in a political struggle, who believed in a peaceful political struggle, they all agreed to the concessions that were being offered through Akbar-Hydari Agreement. So under the Akbar-Hydari Agreement, British India promised that independence is not possible, right? India will not agree for that. Outright independence is not possible, but however, we will provide constitutional autonomy within the Indian constitution that is going to be drafted in a few years. All right, that is what the agreement promised. Essentially, the Akbar-Hydari Agreement promised that Naga areas cannot be given independence. India will not agree to that. But Naga areas will be given autonomy, constitutional autonomy over executive powers, legislative powers, even financial powers. Such autonomy will be given, but within the ambit of the Indian constitution, meaning Naga areas will remain under India's sovereignty itself. It will remain a part of the Indian Union. It will be merged with India at any cost. Independence will not be given, but autonomy will be given, constitutional autonomy, constitutionally guaranteed. So this proposal under Akbar-Hydari Agreement, it seemed reasonable for some of the moderate Naga leaders, and some of the NNC leaders, they agreed to it and they signed the agreement as well. But however, there were several extremist leaders within NNC who rejected the deal. Basically, there was a split within the Naga group. The moderate members who believed in more peaceful struggle, right, who were more political, they understood that this was a reasonable gesture. They realized that outright independence is not possible, but autonomy is still good. It will help the ethnic community to protect their culture, their land and rights. So they agreed to the agreement, but the extremist leaders of NNC, especially some of the soldiers who had fought for British, right, who had enough wartime skills, they rejected the agreement and they unilaterally declared independence from India. A day before India's independence, on 14th August 1947, these extremist leaders of NNC, they declared unilateral independence, thus raising the first separatist war against India. Even before the country was born, a separatist movement had broken out and NNC would become a notorious insurgent outfit. Is that clear? So this is how Naga insurgency originated in Northeast India. These extremist rebels who had accumulated weapons as well and who had enough wartime skills, they declared a war against India and rejected the Akbar-Hydari agreement. They threw out the deal and they said independence is the only option. So on 14th August, they would declare so-called Naga independence and declare a war against India to fight for their independence. So thus began the first insurgency of India. Not just in Northeast region, but across the country, this would be our first separatist insurgent movement. Throughout 50s, 60s and 70s, the movement would keep escalating. They would sustain the movement, and the NNC and Naga insurgents, they would carry out several attacks in the region that would destabilize the Northeast region. By 1950s, the threat posed by Naga insurgents kept on increasing. Right? It was threatening India's integrity and sovereignty. It was destabilizing the whole of Northeast India. So to tackle the threat, the government of India responded along with the Assam government to bring back a colonial legislation called AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which we have mentioned in previous classes as well. In independent India, AFSPA had not been imposed. It's a colonial era law which was used during Quit India movement and during partition, when large-scale communal violence had broken out during partition. But post-independence, India had kept this law aside, given its controversial provisions. But given the threat in Naga areas and the rising violence and the threat for India's sovereignty, Assam was declared, these Naga areas of Assam was declared as a disturbed area under the Disturbed Areas Act, which paved the way for imposing AFSPA. And thus, Naga areas became the first place in the country where AFSPA was enforced post-independence. So under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which was imposed in parts of Assam, that's in the Naga areas of Assam, special powers were given to the Indian security forces. And the Indian Army, along with the Assam Rifles, they were given the lead role to conduct effective counter-insurgency operations against the Naga insurgents. The Indian Army and Assam Rifles, along with Assam Police, they were empowered with the special powers of AFSPA, and they were ordered to target the Naga insurgents as effectively as possible. And thus began India's counter-insurgency war in Northeast India. So the scale of violence would keep on escalating. But parallelly, India tried to calm down the tensions. We reached out to the moderate political factions again. And what India did was we granted statehood to recognize Naga identity, right? To treat Nagas with greater respect and give them more political rights. Statehood was granted to Nagaland by carving out Naga areas from Assam in 1963. I'm sure you would have studied this as well in polity and in modern history, in post-independence history. Right? When India was being reorganized, the Naga areas were carved out and it was established as a separate state in 1963. Full statehood was granted, thus giving the Naga people more rights, more constitutional rights. Is that clear? Because in Assam, the majority community would be the Assamese. The Assamese have always been dominant. So Nagas would always obviously feel left out and threatened. So to fulfill some of their political, cultural, and economic rights, Naga areas were carved out from Assam and a separate state was formed, which is your Nagaland. The government was hoping that this would initiate a peace process, that this could calm down the tensions, this would satisfy the demands of Nagas, and at least some political leaders would be happy with it and they would reduce the support and maybe scale down insurgency as well. So, hoping to start a peace process, India granted statehood with the intention of providing greater rights to the Naga people. But these concessions that India was making was not enough. The Naga insurgents wouldn't agree or settle to anything less than complete independence. Right? So, despite granting statehood, Naga insurgency did not come down or it didn't end. And instead, they found a base. They found a support base in East Pakistan. As India had scaled up its counterinsurgency operations, and as Indian forces were targeting the Naga insurgents, they moved out of India and settled in East Pakistan, where Pakistani state agencies would start backing the Naga insurgents. A safe haven was made available in East Pakistan. The then Pakistani state would provide the support needed, would provide funds, arms, and shelter to these insurgents to wage their war against India. So in many ways, it was Pakistan's covert war, a secret war against India to destabilize the Northeast region. Right? So until 1970-71, the insurgency continued and remained a major threat for India. But then, when India liberated Bangladesh in 1971, when East Pakistan was broken apart from Pakistan and a new country was born, that is Bangladesh, these Naga rebels, they lost their support, they lost their safe haven, and immediately they came under tremendous pressure from India. They could no longer hide. They couldn't simply cross the border and enter East Pakistan and hide with Pakistani support. Because we broke the country into two parts and helped in the liberation of Bangladesh, we helped the Bengali liberation movement. And the Bangladeshi government was very grateful to India and assisted in cracking down on these Naga insurgents. So as the safe haven and support base was destroyed in Bangladesh, the Naga insurgents lost their bases and they came under renewed pressure from Indian forces. So as India stepped up counterinsurgency operations, Naga insurgency weakened, and we used the opportunity to work out a peace accord called the Shillong Accord of 1975. A peace process was initiated with NNC insurgents, and after negotiating with the insurgent outfit, the Shillong Peace Accord was signed. The negotiations happened in Shillong, in Meghalaya, in a neutral location. So that's why it's called the Shillong Accord. So the Shillong Accord was basically a reiteration of Akbar Hydari Agreement. The constitutional autonomy, which was promised in 1947, the same promise was offered by India again. This is honestly a reasonable offer from India. Granting constitutional autonomy to help the community protect their land, their culture, their identity is a very big concession. Right? It happens only in democratic countries like India. Ideally, the Nagas should have taken this offer. Even this time, it was the same tragic story again. Just like it happened with Akbar Hydari Agreement, some of the sensible, moderate leaders of Naga National Council, they agreed. They promised that they'll abide by the Shillong Accord. But there were many extremist insurgents who rejected the accord again, and they broke the Shillong Accord. They walked out of these talks process, right? Only some of the moderate, sensible leaders were accepting the Shillong Accord, and they were ready to settle for constitutional autonomy being offered by India. But these radical extremists who were hell-bent on leading the war and fighting for independence, they broke the Shillong Accord and established a new outfit. These extremist leaders who believed in just violence and nothing else, they quit NNC. They quit the NNC because in NNC there were many moderate political leaders who were agreeing to the offer being made by India. They saw that this was a great offer to settle the crisis, right? It would fulfill the interests of both the parties. Naga areas would remain under India's sovereignty without threatening our integrity and sovereignty, but they would get their constitutional autonomy to protect their land and rights. So even though the moderate leaders were accepting, the extremist leaders, they rejected the accord. They quit the NNC itself. They walked out of NNC and they formed a new terrorist organization, the NSCN, a notorious Naga terror group. Technically speaking, it's an insurgent organization, but given the scale of violence it has carried out, given the way in which it has targeted civilians, our soldiers, and how it has threatened our integrity and sovereignty, it is nothing other than a terrorist organization. That is exactly how India has classified NSCN and all the factions of NSCN under the UAPA. Under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, NSCN and all the factions of NSCN, all the branches, they're all designated as terrorist outfits by India. This is purely because of the scale of violence they have carried out, the brutal, mindless violence, because of the number of civilians and Indian soldiers they have killed, and how they have threatened our integrity and sovereignty. Right? So NSCN was established in 1980, and now these extremists, they moved to Myanmar. They found a new shelter, a new support base in Myanmar, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. It was formed by three notorious terrorists, Isaac, Muiwa, and Kaplang. These three notorious insurgents come terrorists, they were the ones who would establish this group. They were the ones who rejected the Shillong Accord and established NSCN as a dangerous insurgent terror organization with base in Myanmar, primary base in Myanmar. All right, it was formed in 1980, almost 3 decades after the start of Naga insurgency. So this group, the NSCN, would go on to commit major acts of terrorism in the Northeast. The NSCN not only found support in Myanmar, but it found a support base in Bangladesh as well, as Bangladesh had now come under hostile governments, pro-Pakistan and anti-India governments. So in Myanmar, NSCN established contact with Chinese intelligence. Chinese intelligence agencies would get in touch with NSCN to back the Naga insurgents by providing funds and weapons to them from China into Myanmar. In Bangladesh, Pakistan, which was waiting for revenge against India, right, would start aiding NSCN with the hostile Bangladeshi government. The government of Bangladesh itself had become hostile. It had come under military rule. The Bangladeshi army, which was infiltrated by radicals who were pro-Pakistan, they had taken over the government, toppled the civilian government, and they had established a military dictatorship. So this hostile Bangladeshi government, along with Pakistan, started backing NSCN, along with Chinese support in Myanmar. So this external support by our hostile neighbors turned NSCN into one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the region. It very quickly got involved in organized crime all across the region. It would resort to brutal violence to establish its supremacy and dominance, and it would engage in extortion, in drugs and arms smuggling. It would build contacts in Golden Triangle, right, in the Myanmar, Thailand, Laos border region, work with those criminal cartels to smuggle drugs and weapons and to threaten leaders, officials, and popular individuals in India to extort money from them. They would start blocking roads and highways as well and impose their local so-called taxes on all vehicles that would pass through. They would threaten the businesses, local shops and businesses would be threatened to pay weekly, monthly hafta or ransom or else they will be targeted by these terrorists. So that is how the NSCN started raising funds. It blocked key highways. These terrorists would hold weapons and stand on key highways and establish a toll booth. If a truck has to pass through, they have to pay a ransom to them. If someone has to run a shop, a restaurant, or a small business, they have to pay a ransom to them. Right? Even many top leaders or well-known individuals from the region, even they will be threatened and they will be extorted. So essentially, it became a criminal organization with its terrorist activities. Is that clear? You can clearly see the link between organized crime and terrorism. Later, in 1988, this group split on ideological lines. Due to differences that came up between the leaders, Isaak Muiwa and Kaplan, the group got split into two factions, the IM faction and the Kaplan faction. Is that clear? The NSCN, which had been formed in 1980, it now got divided into the IM faction led by Isaak and Muiwa, which largely used Bangladesh as its safe haven, and Kaplan, the other NSCN leader, formed NSCN-K or NSCN Kaplan faction with Myanmar as his base. So this split divided the NSCN and two new factions were born. And both the factions were a threat for India, and they continued their acts of insurgency and terrorism against India. All right? But India managed to step up the counterinsurgency operations, and we managed to weaken these outfits in 1980s, which forced them to sign ceasefire agreements with the government of India in 1990s. After waging decades of insurgent terrorist war against India, finally they agreed for a ceasefire, because India was always looking for a settlement, a peaceful settlement. We were looking to initiate a peace process so we can settle these conflicts. At the end of the day, these are Indian citizens, right? Even the extremists, they would be Indian citizens. So along with tackling the security threat through better security operations and intelligence operations, after weakening the groups, India would reach out to them offering a peace process. And through the talks, we agreed for a ceasefire, which was signed in 1997 with NSCN IM and with Kaplan faction in 2001. So both the outfits, they agreed to halt their operations against India. Is that clear? After several years of causing terror, they signed a ceasefire agreement with the Indian government and government of Assam, government of Nagaland. And these ceasefire agreements were signed in 97 and 2001. But unfortunately, none of these groups were by the ceasefire agreement. They breached the ceasefire very soon because they were not interested in surrendering their outfits. They didn't want to give up their arms and weapons. They breached the ceasefire because they continued getting support in Bangladesh and Myanmar. They were confident that they could continue the war outside of India. Their presence in India declined. Their operations in India weakened because of our security operations. But they were confident that they could continue waging this war from the neighboring countries, from across the border. So even though ceasefire agreement was signed, both these factions, they breached it and continued their war against India. The war continued for many more years until 2009 at least. In the meantime, many other factions came up. In fact, there are 3 to 4 more factions, but they're all minor NSCN outfits, like the Kole Kitovi faction that was formed in 2011. All right, it broke away from the Kaplan faction. Then in last 4 years itself, there are 2 more factions that have formed in Myanmar. Few relatives of Kaplan, they have led their own groups and formed their own NSCN factions. So like this, there are at least 5 to 6 different NSCN factions in total. But the most dangerous have been Isaak Muiwa faction, the IM, and the Kaplan, the K faction. These two are the most dangerous threats for India. So this war continued all the way up until 2009, as they easily enjoyed support in Bangladesh and as well as in Myanmar. All right. So this is the serious threat that India has faced from Naga insurgency. Now, if you look at the ideology of these groups, in fact, most Northeast insurgent groups, if you look at their ideology, their structure, if you look at the method of their operations, if you look at how they are organized, everything points out that they are left-wing extremist outfits. They are inspired by left-wing extremist ideology. They're inspired by extreme communism, Maoism. Those are their political ideologies. Now you know how insurgent outfits are structured, how they operate, what are their principles, what are their strategies. We have studied that under Naxalism. We have studied that under the terrorism chapter, where we compared terrorism with insurgency. So if you look at the methods of operation and the structure of all these groups, these Northeast insurgent groups, majority of them are left-wing extremist organizations. Their political ideology is inclined towards extreme communism and Maoism. But there are some interesting cases like NSCN, where you find a mixture of left-wing extremism with religious ideology. Usually these are polar opposites, right? In left-wing extremism, we have studied in the first class, religion holds no importance. In fact, in true left-wing extremism, atheism is promoted, right? Non-belief, or not believing in any religion is the core agenda in left-wing extremism. Focusing on religious faith and religious ideology is a right-wing trait. It's a right-wing extremist trait. But there are few Northeast insurgent groups like NSCN and others, you will see them in the coming discussion as well, that even though they are left-wing extremist outfits politically and in their structure and in their operations, they do have a religious agenda as well. The NSCN wanted to liberate all these areas, the Naga areas, bring all the Naga inhabited areas together, including the areas in Myanmar, to form the so-called Greater Nagaland or Nagalim, and turn this country into a Christian country, into a Christian nation. Christianity has a lot of appeal and influence across Northeast India. It was largely the British missionaries, the Western missionaries who introduced Christianity into the region, right? They would convert several tribes, ethnic communities. They had their own cultural religious practices. They would convert them to Christianity and remains dominant here. But some of the extremist groups, they have mixed religion with their radical ideology. And it's very unique. You don't see this anywhere in the world, where left-wing extremist ideology is linked with a religious ideology. There are groups like the Mizo National Front, the MNF, right? Even MNF, politically, structurally, it's a left-wing extremist outfit inspired by communism, socialism, and Maoism. But even MNF wanted to break Mizo areas away and form a Christian country, right? So this is a unique feature that you find in Northeast India. The communal angle also plays a role, because there are other communities in Northeast India which are either aligned with Hinduism or Islam, and the religious angle also comes into picture with regard to the complex dynamics of the Northeastern society. All right. So NSCN wanted to turn the so-called Nagalim or Greater Nagaland into a Christian country if it managed to break these areas away from India. Their goal was to liberate all the Naga areas from Arunachal Pradesh to Assam, Manipur, Mizoram, break those Naga areas away from India and even the Naga areas in Myanmar, and unite them to form Greater Nagaland or Nagalim. So this is how Naga insurgency continued, and it was a major threat for us all the way until 2009. Is that clear? These factions remained very active. NSCN-IM would continue operating from Bangladesh. Its major base was in Bangladesh for Isaac Muiwa. For Kaplang faction and other minor factions, the base was Myanmar. So from across the country, across the borders, these groups continued operating and threatening India, and they continued their criminal activities. Even though they were present abroad, through their networks present here in Nagaland and in Northeast India, they continued their extortion, they continued their smuggling of drugs and weapons, right? Essentially, they were running a mafia, running their own illegal businesses. So you can clearly see that this insurgency, or rather most extremist movements, they are more about the business side of it. They are more about the money and the political side of it than the true interests of the people. right? Instead of fighting for the true interests of the community, it eventually becomes a political and a money-making machine for these terrorists. That is exactly what NSCN became. It has made a lot of money, raised a lot of funds through these criminal activities. It has dominated the politics of the region as well, influencing the politics of the region. That is the true interest of these groups. They claim to fight for the community and fight for independence. They're simply using extremism as an event and keep making money on the side to run their illegal businesses. So many experts believe these groups are nothing short of criminal organizations right now, right? They're using insurgency as an excuse, using the gun, using the violence to justify their cause, right? And retain their dominance. But in reality, they're simply running their illegal criminal businesses. Is that clear? Now, what happened after 2009? After 2009, there have been dramatic changes. A massive transformation has happened with regard to Naga insurgency. In Bangladesh, India saw a positive change. A much welcome change happened with Sheikh Hasina coming to power. Sheikh Hasina, a very good friend of India, became the Prime Minister and led her party, Awami League, to a decisive victory in the elections. Awami League has been historically close to India. India backed Awami League during the Bengali liberation movement. Sheikh Hasina's father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh, also called Bangabandhu, was a very good friend of India, and India had supported Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Awami League in their independence struggle against Pakistan. So since then, we share very good ties with Mujibur Rahman's family, including his daughter Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League. As soon as she came to power, she immediately started protecting Indian interests. She would work with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and together the two governments launched a major crackdown on Northeast insurgents. Until then, this was not possible because we always had hostile governments in Bangladesh which would never cooperate with India. The military rule, and there's another party called BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. They've always been aligned with Pakistan and radical forces, and they've always acted against India. So when these governments were there, they would never cooperate with India. Rather, they would keep backing these terror groups against India. But now that this big change happened in Bangladesh, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh immediately reached out and re-established the strong political ties and security ties with Bangladesh. And Sheikh Hasina played a critical role in launching a crackdown against all these Northeast insurgent outfits. There were multiple Northeast insurgent groups hiding in Bangladesh at that point in 2009. All these groups were decimated by Bangladesh. India would share intelligence. As a result of this security cooperation, India would start sharing intelligence with Bangladesh, and we started planning some joint operations in the border areas. So these collective efforts of our intelligence agencies and security forces led to a complete crackdown on these insurgents, and their safe havens were destroyed. Is that clear? Indian intelligence agencies, IB and RAW, would play a critical role along with Assam Rifles and Indian Army. We collaborated with Bangladesh, improved border security as well, plugged the gaps in border security, shared intelligence with the Bangladeshi authorities, and planned joint operations to destroy the safe havens that existed across the border. So multiple Northeast groups which were settled here, which were sheltered here, they were all decimated. Their routes of funding, routes of weapons, everything was destroyed. The sanctuaries were destroyed. And many of the top leaders of these terror groups, they were handed over to India by Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina's government detained many of these top terrorists and handed them over to India. So leaders of NSC and IM, they were handed over to India, thus bringing down this movement in one shot. It was a major transformation that happened. That's why Northeast region stabilized after 2009. Not just NSCN, many other terror groups like ULFA, NDFB, many others were hiding in Bangladesh with support from the hostile governments. Thanks to Sheikh Hasina and her government, these terror sanctuaries were destroyed within weeks, and most of the top terrorists were arrested and handed over to India, which helped in bringing down these movements. That's why after 2009, Northeast India became more stable and the scale of violence and terrorism went down. So Isaac Muiwa faction had no other option. They had to surrender and agree for a peace process with the government of India. Is that clear? So in 2015, the Modi government took forward this process. It took forward the progress seen under Manmohan Singh's government, and Prime Minister Modi initiated a peace process with the Naga groups. The government of India started a dialogue with NSCN IM faction and other Naga political groups and student unions. All the Naga representatives were brought together. There are several Naga student unions representing the Naga youth. There are many political groups as well representing Naga interests, and insurgent groups like NSC and IM. All of them were brought together by the government of India along with the state government of Nagaland. And a framework agreement was signed in 2015. A historic agreement was signed to start the peace process, to start the negotiations for a peace accord between the insurgents and the Indian government. Is that clear? So this is what started the peace process, and it is still ongoing. We are yet to achieve a final peace accord. The peace process has hit some hurdles on the way, but the signing of the framework agreement for starting the peace process in itself was a very, very big development, a major development. It basically meant we were on the verge of ending our oldest insurgency, right? The first insurgency of India is about to be brought to an end once the peace accord is finalized. Is that clear? So 2015 saw this major development where the framework agreement was signed for the Naga peace process, and all Naga political groups with NSC and IM, they have been participating in talks with the Indian government and the state government. All right. Now you might ask, what happened to the other major group, the Kaplang faction? What happened to NSC and Kaplang, which was the most notorious outfit? NSC and Kaplang has refused to surrender. The Kaplang faction, which is based out of Myanmar, continues to enjoy support from local Nagas in Myanmar and continues to enjoy support from Chinese intelligence agencies. So Kaplang faction is confident that it can still thrive and continue and sustain the movement against India. It has refused to surrender and it rejected the peace process. It rejected the framework agreement signed in 2015 and even showed its displeasure and anger against the peace process by launching a major attack against India. In 2015, there was a major terror attack against the Indian Army in Northeast India, which was a retaliation by the Kaplang group against the framework agreement and the peace process which was started by the Modi government. If you guys have seen the movie Uri, which is based on the surgical strikes of India in Pakistan following the Uri attacks, that movie opens with a scene in Northeast India, right? You see that there is an Indian Army convoy passing near the Myanmar border in the Ukrul Chandel sector. And this army convoy is blown apart by a Northeast terrorist group. Many Indian soldiers are martyred. Following this attack, Indian Army retaliates with a surgical strike in Myanmar. Across the border in Myanmar, a special covert operation is carried out by Indian Special Forces, the Para Commandos, where they destroy many terror camps inside Myanmar. All these events depicted in the movie, they are real incidents, right? It was this attack which is shown in the movie. NSC and Kaplang, which is based out of Myanmar, carried out a major strike against Indian Army, killing several Indian soldiers, which was a direct retaliation against the peace process which had been started. To show its displeasure and anger, it carried out this attack, killing many Indian soldiers. So later, the Indian Army took its revenge, retaliated against the Kaplang faction by carrying out a precision surgical strike inside Myanmar's territory. Since we have good ties with Myanmar, right, we collaborate in counterinsurgency operations. Indian Special Forces, the Para Commandos, Para SF, they were infiltrated into Myanmar across the border to target these terror camps of NSA and Kaplang. All right. So NSA and Kaplang remains in a state of war with India. It has not surrendered. It continues its separatist war against India, and it has rejected the peace process. Understood? So that is the current status of NSA and Kaplang. It still enjoys support from China as well. India has evidence and intelligence to prove that Chinese agencies are still backing the Kaplang faction. So now, what is the status with the peace process? In 2015, the Naga peace process that was started, where does it stand today? What is the current status? This is another important point. So, to carry forward the peace process, the Indian government appointed a special envoy, R.N. Ravi. R.N. Ravi is a IPS officer. He retired from the IPS. He was one of the top intelligence officers in the IB. He retired as a special secretary in the IB, the Intelligence Bureau, and he's a specialist in Northeast insurgency. Most of his career, he has spent it in Northeast India and beyond, right? He is a specialist in tackling Northeast insurgency. So as a professional career intelligence officer, he was appointed as the envoy of the Indian government to lead the talks. And he was even appointed as the governor of Nagaland. He was appointed as the governor of the state to represent the center so that he could lead these talks with the Naga groups. Is that clear? He would talk to NSCN IM and the other Naga groups which were part of the peace process. Is that clear? So these talks continued for many years between R.N. Ravi and the Naga outfits. But eventually, differences broke out between the negotiators, leading to a major standoff between R.N. Ravi and the Naga groups. The Nagas, they were demanding a separate constitution. They wanted a separate flag, along with the constitutional autonomy that India was promising. See, we provide constitutional autonomy to many tribal indigenous areas. Indian constitution allows this under the 6th schedule, right? We had promised autonomy under the 6th schedule. If these insurgents surrendered, ended their war permanently, in return, we'll provide them autonomy under the 6th schedule of the constitution, delegate administrative, financial, legal, legislative powers to them so they can look after their own administration, local administration. They can protect their resources, their land and rights, and their culture while remaining within Indian sovereignty, right? This was the deal being offered. While India is comfortable in providing constitutional autonomy, right, because we have given this to many other areas in Northeast India, India doesn't agree for separate constitution and separate flag, as the same special status for Jammu and Kashmir was opposed by the current government. Under Article 370, the special status that was given to J&K provided for similar provisions, provided for a separate constitution, a separate flag. This is what truly gave special status to J&K, which allowed the state legislature and the state government to exercise its own powers to even undercut the powers of the center and the parliament, right? So Nagas were demanding something similar. They wanted separate constitution and a separate flag, along with constitutional autonomy and tremendous financial benefits to provide for development of Naga areas. So on this point, there was a major difference that came up between the negotiators. As I told you, constitutional autonomy is not the problem. India will agree to this. This is the primary offer that we make, that will give you constitutional autonomy under 6th schedule. Providing financial concession is not a problem. India will agree for additional financial allocation so the region can be developed. Because we have done this previously with other insurgent groups. You will see that in the next discussion. But India's problem was with demand for a separate constitution and a flag. This was non-negotiable for the Modi government. Because politically it would be suicide. In J&K, they have opposed the separate constitution and the separate flag. It was one of the prime factors because of which J&K special status was revoked. Now, if they go on to provide a similar provision for a northeastern state, right, politically that would be suicide. It would trigger a major backlash against the ruling party. So the negotiator R.N. Ravi rejected this demand, leading to major differences between the negotiators, and a standoff occurred between R.N. Ravi and NSC and IM. Then R.N. Ravi went on to write a column in the Hindu. He went to the media. He wrote a detailed column in the Hindu newspaper calling out NSC and IM for the atrocities it has committed. And he called it a criminal gang which still continues to operate like a mafia, which still extorts money from people and businesses, even when it is negotiating with the Indian government. R.N. Ravi, who was upset with the NSCN negotiators, he wrote this public column as the governor of Nagaland and publicly lashed out at NSCN. He called it a terrorist organization which has engaged in brutal violence in the past, and even now, even after the so-called ceasefire and surrender, they are still running a criminal mafia, carrying out extortion, smuggling drugs, controlling businesses. Right? This is what NSCN has been doing. So once R.N. Ravi lashed out, NSCN IM rejected him as the negotiator. The NSCN was angry, right? It appealed to Government of India to remove R.N. Ravi as he was not being neutral. See, again, it's about what you believe in, right? Let's not get into the politics of this, because R.N. Ravi has been very controversial as well. Following this, R.N. Ravi was removed as the governor of Nagaland and he was transferred to Tamil Nadu as the governor of Tamil Nadu. Even there, R.N. Ravi picked a major issue with the Tamil Nadu government. He created a constitutional crisis in Tamil Nadu as well, right? So let's not get into the politics of it, because usually governor's office is often misused by ruling parties at the center. So no matter what happened, right, there were differences that came up between the negotiators, leading to a standoff. And as a result, the talks have stalled. The peace process has hit a stalemate. It has stalled for several months, and we haven't seen any progress as such. This is the current status regarding Naga insurgency. All right. The peace process started in 2015 with NSCN, IM, and other Naga political groups. It has stalled for several years because of the standoff, right? There has been a difference of opinion between the Government of India and the Naga negotiators. So after R.N. Ravi was removed as the governor and transferred to Tamil Nadu, the talk process has hit a dead end. It has stalled for the time being. NSCN Kaplang continues to remain a terrorist outfit operating from Myanmar, reportedly with Chinese support, and keeps targeting India even today. There are a few other minor factions that have taken root, but they're all very minor outfits. They don't really pose much of a threat to India. So this is the current status of Naga insurgency, the oldest insurgency of India. All right. So the topic is very, very important, because the Naga peace process might revive very soon, maybe right before the elections, because next year we have national elections. Government of India might give a push for these initiatives. You might see a peace accord being worked out in the coming months. It might happen. It's a possibility. Or after the elections, government might revisit the issue. It might fast track the peace process and we might find a solution, and Naga peace accord might be worked out finally. If it happens, if the Naga peace accord is finalized, this will be the single biggest development as far as Northeast India is concerned, because it will bring the oldest insurgency of India to an end, bearing the exception of NSC and Kaplang. Apart from the Kaplang faction, we would have ended Naga insurgency through a political and negotiated process. So that is why watch out in current affairs. The topic is very important. Every now and then there will be articles on the Naga peace process. So please pay attention to it. So this completes my discussion on Naga insurgency. So let me know if you have any questions, any doubts. After that, I'll take up the next state. We'll talk about Assam and the various insurgencies seen in Assam. Assam is not as simple as Nagaland. In the case of Nagaland, it was only one insurgency, the Naga insurgency, right? Led by NNC and then by NSCN. But in Assam, it's not so simple. It's much more complicated than this. Assam has seen multiple insurgencies over a different period of time. They've had different root causes as well. So we need more time to cover Assam in detail. So if you have any doubts, any questions, let me know regarding Naga insurgency, and then we'll proceed with Assam. Priyanshu is asking, sir, currently there is no Naga peace accord. No, Naga peace accord has not been finalized yet. The peace process is going on under the framework agreement signed in 2015. C. An is asking, means Nagaland is not part of India before 2015? No, not at all. Nagaland has been a part of India since 1947. Naga insurgents might be fighting their war, but Naga areas are very much a part of India. It has been under India's sovereignty, but they have rebelled and they have been waging an insurgent war against India. Sulakshana is asking, what kind of questions are asked by UPSC regarding Nagaland? UPSC might ask a mains question where you are asked to explain the history of Naga insurgency. It might ask you to examine the root cause of Naga insurgency and its evolution and the current status. Or there might be a question on the current peace process which is going on, right? Or there could be a question on the cross-border support that Naga insurgents have received in neighboring countries. So on these lines, questions can be asked. Abhijit has a question related to Khalistan movement. He's asking, sir, in the Punjabi Subha movement, they demanded separate statehood, and after the Fazal Ali Commission, the state was anyways trifurcated. But why central government initially not agreed to divide, but later trifurcated Punjab? See, what Punjabi Subha movement and Akali Dal were demanding was an exclusive Punjabi state. They wanted Punjab to be divided on linguistic lines, where there would be some Punjabi speaking areas and non-Punjabi speaking areas. So in the Punjabi speaking areas, Punjabis who speak the Punjabi language, they would get preferential treatment. They would basically have preferential provisions in that region. Now this was not acceptable to India because this linguistic division, where Punjabi areas are separated from non-Punjabi speaking areas, would have inadvertently benefited the Sikh community. There was a religious angle to it because majority speakers of Punjabi language are from the Sikh community. So that would essentially become a communal partition within India. So given the communal overtones of such a demand, India rejected the creation of Punjab on such demands, on such linguistic lines. Later, Fazal Ali Commission was different. Fazal Ali Commission's recommendation was to trifurcate Punjab, break it into three parts, and Punjab would just be another linguistic state, just like any other linguistic state in India. Right? It was only a distinction on administrative grounds. It would not be exclusive to any community, any particular language. Now, Punjab is not exclusive to Punjabi speakers. Anyone can go and settle in Punjab. Right? A Tamilian or Marathi can go and settle in Punjab if you want. If Punjabi Subha movement had been met, then Punjabi speakers would have had special privileges which would discriminate against outsiders and non-Punjabi speakers. So indirectly that would benefit the Sikh community alone, right? That is why the communal angle was there. So India rejected their demand. So there is a difference between the trifurcation that India carried out and what Punjabi Subha movement and Akali Dal were demanding. Srinu is asking, sir, why India can't clear Naga insurgency? See, any insurgency or any extremist movement is not so easy to wipe out. Just with security operations, you can't tackle these threats. It needs a mix of negotiations. It needs security operations as well. But of course, you need negotiations as well, along with better development of the region. Multiple strategies are needed to tackle insurgent movements, right? So we have found it challenging to deal with Naga insurgency because they operate in forested areas. They have got support in our neighboring countries across the border where we can't reach and target them. So because of all the factors which we studied yesterday, that's why I explained the common factors yesterday. Because of the geographical factors and the geopolitical factors of the region, these insurgent movements have thrived for many, many decades. As they get cross-border support and as the complex geography is aiding the insurgents, it becomes more difficult for us to tackle these insurgencies. Sridevi is asking, if peace process is seen as a success, then which type of question will be asked on this topic? If peace accord is signed, definitely the question will focus on the peace accord itself. Like, what potential does it hold for stabilizing Northeast India? Or critically examine the provisions of the Naga peace accord, right? Or discuss the origin of Naga movement, the Naga insurgent movement, and examine the provisions of the Naga peace accord. Such basic questions can be asked. Santosh is asking, is it important to remember the important leaders of NSCN? These three leaders, yes. Since they have formed two factions and the factions are known by their initials, it's better to remember their names. It's very simple. Isaac, Muiwa, Kaplan. Only three names, right? Because the factions that have broken out, it is named after the leaders itself. So it's better to remember these three names. Chandrasekhar is asking, sir, you're saying they're extremist insurgents, then how do they come in contact with governor for negotiating? See, we have struck a peace process with them. They have given up their insurgent war. They have signed a ceasefire agreement. That's why the 2015 framework agreement was signed. They have stopped their insurgency, at least officially. And the government of India is directly talking to them. We are talking to them. We are allowing them to come and meet the governor and talk to them and work out the peace accord. Is that clear? Vaishna is asking, so we saw what an important change took place due to a friendly government in Bangladesh. It led to crackdown on Northeast insurgents. So given this, it will never happen with China and Pakistan. So what measures can India take? This is something we discussed yesterday, right? In the last chapter. With regard to China and Pakistan, of course, they'll never cooperate to tackle terrorism. The measures we discussed, be it the intelligence measures, the border security measures, the diplomatic measures, the financial measures, that is what India will be employing to counter terrorism that emanates from Pakistan. Because Pakistan will never cooperate with us to tackle terrorism. Why would it? Right? It is the one sponsoring terrorism against India. Bangladesh was a different case. We got a friendly government under Awami League and it cooperated with us to tackle these insurgents. Kumari is asking, is NSCN IM still involved in any attacks? See, NSCN IM is not directly carrying out any terror attacks as such. After the peace accord was started, the framework agreement was signed in 2015. It is bound by the accord to not carry out attacks. It is in a ceasefire right now. But it is engaging in criminal activities. It is continuing its extortion rings. It's continuing to smuggle drugs and weapons. It is acting like a illegal mafia, a criminal mafia. All right. But insurgent terror attacks have stopped because of the 2015 framework agreement, which has started the peace process. All right. So guys, these are the questions. Now, let's move on to the next topic. Let's take a look at insurgencies in Assam. This is a very important topic. All right. As I told you, there are different movements that we need to study. First, I'll start with ULFA, the most dangerous insurgent movement of Assam. Right? It was led by a group called ULFA, United Liberation Front of Assam. This insurgency that we saw in Assam, it is rooted in some external factors. The root cause for the insurgency comes from outside of India. All right. So let us examine this in detail. Ulfa insurgency started in late 1970s. That is when Ulfa was formed by some of the radical extremist students from Assam. There were few student leaders who were part of the Assam Students Union. They were more radical and extremist in their ideology, and they launched this war against India by setting up an insurgent outfit called Ulfa in the late 70s. Is that clear? So, the root cause which contributed to the rise of this insurgency is the large-scale illegal migration that Assam has witnessed from East Pakistan and later from Bangladesh. Is that clear? When India Pakistan were partitioned in 1947, there was a large influx of refugees into India. A lot of Bengali refugees came into India. Bengali Hindus, Bengali Muslims, right? They all came towards India and settled in India. Later, there were other internal problems in East Pakistan where few Buddhists and other communities also moved to India. You might have heard of Hajongs, right? Chakmas. All these communities from East Pakistan, they moved and settled in Northeast India. They took refuge in India. These were refugees who were facing a threat to their lives, their well-being. But after Bangladesh was liberated in 1971, after it became an independent country, we started receiving a wave of illegal migrants. Right before Bangladesh was liberated in 1970-71, we had again received a massive inflow of refugees because of the genocide that Pakistan had committed against the Bengalis. Correct? This is what had triggered the liberation movement. The Pakistani army had committed brutal atrocities amounting to a genocide against the Bengalis. So almost 10 million refugees had come across the border into India. So all those who came before 1971, they were all refugees largely. Some of them came during partition, some of them during the violence that Pakistan was carrying out in 70-71. But after Bangladesh was born, after it was liberated, we started receiving illegal migrants, and there was a large influx of illegal migrants. All right. So this entry of outsiders on such a large scale has been viewed with suspicion by the native community in Assam, which is the Assamese. Assamese are the most dominant community in Assam and also in the entire Northeast India. Right? They trace their influence from the Ahom kingdom, from the legendary Ahom kingdom. Right? Since medieval times, the Assamese have been the most dominant group or the indigenous community of the region. The native Assamese, they've always seen the outsiders with suspicion. They have resisted the illegal migrants in particular. See, refugees are different from illegal migrants. I hope you understand that. Refugees are coming across the border to save their lives. There is a risk to their lives if they remain where they are. It means they're being targeted, usually by the state itself or by other terror groups. There is a direct threat to their life. That's why they're escaping from their country, crossing the borders illegally and asking asylum in another country. Protecting refugees is a humanitarian obligation. It's a duty to protect refugees. You're trying to save their lives. Illegal migrants are different. They are crossing over illegally because they want a better life. They have no threat to their life back in their country. But they're coming for a better job, a better standard of living. And this cannot be tolerated. No country tolerates illegal migration. So please understand the difference between refugees and illegal migrants. We have taken a lot of refugees in the past, right? So just the flow of refugees wouldn't have been the problem in Assam. It was the influx of illegal migrants that escalated after 1971 that became the challenge for India. As Bangladesh was struggling, Bangladesh had a very poor economy. It even came under military rule in 1974-75. So there was no development, no progress, no welfare. So poor Bangladeshis, they started crossing over the border illegally into neighboring states. They entered Tripura, they entered Assam and West Bengal as well. So the large scale illegal migration which started happening started changing the demography of Assam. The native Assamese believed that large scale illegal migration is changing the demography itself, meaning outsiders are increasing in their numbers. And this led to socio-ethnic tensions between the native Assamese and the Bengali illegal migrants. Now, these illegal migrants who have come in from Bangladesh, they are both Bengali Hindus and Bengali Muslims as well. All right. So the native Assamese opposed all the outsiders, irrespective of which religion they belong to. They oppose any illegal migrant who has come from Bangladesh because they see them as a threat to their culture, their land, their identity, and their opportunities. Because in any place, if outsiders come in a very large number, right, that will upset the social and economic and cultural balance in the region, right? The outsiders community could become more dominant, which threatens the natives. It's natural for communities to feel that. They might get hold of resources, more opportunities, which will curb the opportunities available for the natives, right? Then along with that, there could be cross-cultural marriages, which will start happening. Native communities like Assamese, they feel threatened because they have their unique language, unique culture, unique customs. And the entry of outsiders could compromise their identity, their cultural identity. Is that clear? So ethnic groups, indigenous ethnic groups are very guarded, very protective about their cultural identity. They are very protective about their land and their resources and their rights. So the Assamese felt threatened by the large-scale illegal migration which was happening, right? And large-scale protests broke out in Assam in opposition to this illegal migration. We call this the Assam agitation that started in 1979 and lasted until 1985. This was a very violent agitation led by various local political groups along with the Assam Students Union. Under the leadership of Assam Students Union and few other Assamese political outfits, a massive agitation was launched against the central government and the state government for failing to curb the illegal migration. This was a violent agitation. It saw a lot of violence during this entire period, and Assam was completely destabilized because of these violent protests. Now, the biggest concern of the Assamese was that these illegal migrants, allegedly, they had gotten registered on the electoral roll. This is an established fact, not just an allegation or a rumor anymore. In the late 70s, it was noticed that some of the Bengali illegal migrants coming from Bangladesh who had settled in Assam, they had voter ID cards. They had got their names listed on electoral rolls, meaning they had got an Indian identification document. This couldn't have happened without some kind of political support at the local level. So this led to allegations that the elections were being manipulated by using illegal migrants. As thousands of illegal migrants were present, it was alleged by the protesters that political parties were misusing the issue. They were giving ID cards to the illegal migrants, getting them listed as voters, and in return getting their votes, which was electoral malpractice essentially. Because the illegal migrants would crave some documentation. Once they get voter ID card, they can get all the other identifications done, and for every purpose they'll become an Indian citizen, right? Because in the Indian subcontinent, you can't distinguish between different people. We all look the same. How can you distinguish a Bangladeshi from an Indian, Pakistani from an Indian, Sri Lankan from an Indian? We all look the same, right? Ethnically, we are pretty much the same. So since the features are the same, the physical features, if the illegal migrants get hold of official documents, if they get those documents made, fake documents made, they will become Indian citizens for every matter. With voter ID card, the two given officially, not even fake, these were original voter ID cards given to them. Their names were entered in the voters list. Their names were there on the electoral roll. Now, this was a corrupt arrangement that some politicians at the local level had created. To win elections, they had struck a deal with the illegal migrants that they will pressurize the officials to get their names listed, issue them voter ID cards, which will help the illegal migrants to change their illegal status. They can go and get all the other documents done and basically become Indian citizens and settle in India forever. In return, they'll vote for that party. They will vote for that leader who got them listed on the electoral list. This quid pro quo arrangement started happening in some of these districts in Assam. Now, the fear is that if leaders and governments are elected through votes from illegal migrants who are now converted into legal citizens, the governments will start favoring them. Those leaders and governments which come to power, even after coming to power, they'll be obligated to serve their interests. They'll become a vote bank. They'll have to come out with policies and schemes which will preferentially benefit this community who have come from the outside, the Bengali Hindus and Bengali Muslims. So this is where the standoff began. The Assamese protested against this, that electoral malpractices threatens the well-being of the Assamese. Politicians and governments and leaders will start favoring only the illegal migrants tomorrow because they'll vote for them, right? The large-scale illegal migrant population would become a vote bank for them. And they'll keep voting for the party or for that leader just because they have got them the electoral documents done. So this was blatant malpractice in the election that happened in Assam. This became the trigger, the immediate trigger for these violent protests to break out. So as the Assamese felt threatened, they feared that their identity would be lost, their rights and resources would be lost if they did not act. So they launched this major agitation led by the Assam Students Union along with several Assamese political organizations. This movement, the Assam agitation, was met with force by the state government and the center. They used police and security forces to curb the protests, and very quickly it turned violent and several people were killed during these 6 years. It became an extremely violent agitation and large-scale loss of lives were reported among civilians and protesters throughout the 6 years of Assam agitation. Understood? Now the agitators, they primarily wanted few demands to be met. They wanted the NRC, National Register for Citizens of 1951, to be updated, and they wanted better border security and management. They wanted better border security and management to curb future illegal migration. They also wanted few special provisions, special privileges to uplift the Assamese community. They asked for a commission to be set up which will inquire into the backwardness of the Assamese community and how they have suffered because of illegal migration. Based on that, they were demanding some special privileges like reservations, quotas. These were some of the basic demands. Now the question is, what is this NRC? Why were they demanding NRC to be updated? How will it help in tackling illegal migration? NRC, or National Register for Citizens, is basically a register, a database that contains the names of Indian nationals, Indian citizens. It is a list of Indian citizens, as simple as that. This exercise had been held in 1951 after the partition only for the state of Assam. As Assam had received a lot of refugees during partition, lot of refugees had come in during partition from East Pakistan to Assam. So NRC had been carried out in 1951 to distinguish the foreigners from genuine Indian citizens. NRC will list only the Indian citizens who can prove their citizenship, their nationality through documents. And those who cannot, they will be designated as outsiders or foreigners, as illegal foreigners. So this exercise had been done once in 1951. Now the protesters under Assam agitation, they wanted NRC to be done again. Since illegal migrants had come in again in large numbers in 1970, 71 and after that, they wanted NRC to be conducted again, right, and updated so that Indian citizens could be genuinely identified and this could be distinguished from the outsiders, the foreigners, who cannot prove their identification, who can't provide the required documentary support to prove that they were in India before a cutoff date, to prove that they and their family were in India before a cutoff date. They would become illegal foreigners. They would become outsiders essentially. Rest would be on the list as Indian citizens, and accordingly the government can provide for the welfare of the genuine Indians. This was the primary demand of Assam agitation. An updation of NRC, improved border management for tackling illegal migration in the future, and a commission to inquire into the backwardness of the community with special privileges being provided, such as reservation. All right. So the government initially was not agreeing to the demands. The agitation went on, the protests carried on. And in 1983, when the elections happened, large-scale voter malpractices were alleged again. So the violence kept on continuing. And it's in the midst of this violence that Ulfa insurgency was born. In the year 1979, 1 year after Assam agitation, some of the radical students of the Assam Students Union, the All India Assam Students Union, they broke out from the protests, from the agitation, and under the leadership of Arvind Rajkova and other extremists, an insurgent group was formed called ULFA, United Liberation Front of Assam. Right? The goal of this outfit was separatism. It was a separatist outfit. It declared war against India and started an insurgent movement to break Assam away from India, stating that Assamese interests will never be protected in India. These radical students, the radical youth under Arvind Rajkova's leadership, there were a few other radical leaders as well. They were all part of All India Assam Students Union, leading the Assam agitation. But since the government had used a lot of force to crush the movement, initially government was not agreeing to the demands as well. These radical extremists, they broke out from the agitation, broke out from the Students Union, and established an insurgent outfit called ULFA. All right? They blamed the Indian government and Assam government for all the problems, for not tackling illegal migration. This was a genuine issue, no doubt. The issue they were raising was absolutely genuine. There were electoral malpractices. There were illegal migrants registered on the voters list. Right? These were definitely genuine concerns. So the blame was placed on the government of India and the state government, and these radicals started their insurgent war, and they declared a separatist war against India. Their goal was to wage an armed rebellion against India to break Assam, break off entire Assam from India to form a separate country. That they believed this is the only way to protect the Assamese, to protect the native community and their rights and culture. So this is what triggered ULFA's insurgency, which raged from 1979 till 2009 for 40 years. For 3 decades. For a good 3 decades, ULFA remained a major insurgent group which would keep on executing major terror attacks in the region from 1979 to 2009. Right? For more than 3 decades, this group operated as a notorious insurgent outfit, and it carried out many major attacks in the region. It would target Indian forces, the Indian Army and Assam Rifles. It would target government facilities and government institutions belonging to the state government and central government. It would target other communities as well, like outsiders especially, as they opposed illegal migrants. They would target anyone who is assumed to be an illegal migrant. Just based on assumption, They would target people and blame them as being outsiders or Bengali illegal migrants. Now, this eventually acquired a communal angle as well, because a widespread perception started on the ground that most illegal migrants are Muslims. But this is not the truth. The truth is that the established fact is that the illegal migrants who have come from Bangladesh, yes, there are a lot of Bengali Muslims, there are a lot of Bengali Hindus as well. There are other communities which have come from Bangladesh as well, like Hajongs and Chakmas. Chakmas are Buddhists. But this stereotype was spread on the ground by political and extremist elements that most illegal migrants are always Muslims or Bengali Muslims. This stereotyping, this communal polarization, it led to communal targeting of Muslims in the region, where these insurgent groups and radical groups would target the Muslim communities. And even if they are Indian Muslims, later they would blame them, they would brand them as Bengali Muslims, as Bengali illegal migrants. Such atrocities also have happened in Assam, especially with another insurgent group called Bodo insurgents. I'll come to that later. Once we finish Ulfa, we'll come to Bodo insurgency. We'll discuss how these insurgents have targeted people in the region and branded them as illegal migrants. It has acquired a communal overtone where Muslims in the region have been attacked. Entire villages have been burned down. People have been killed and slaughtered. And later they have branded them as Bengali migrants. This is all because of the stereotyping that exists that most migrants are Muslims. Right? Even Indian Muslims who are genuinely Indian citizens have been targeted by many of these insurgent groups. So Ulfa posed a major threat to India. Ulfa was definitely one of the most serious threats for India, because from 1979 to 2009, it scaled up its operations by getting support in Bangladesh, by establishing a safe haven in Bangladesh. Now look at the irony and the hypocrisy of this. These Ulfa terrorists, they were blaming Bangladeshis for all the problems, right? They started their movement, their agitation, their violent insurgency as opposition to outsiders who were coming illegally. Now, as they were targeted by India, as we mounted our counterinsurgency operations, and as AFSPA was extended to all these parts of Assam, they ran away from India, entered Bangladesh illegally, and took support in Bangladesh itself. Their main complaint was against Bangladeshi illegal migrants. And it's even ironic and hypocritical. It's even hysterical that these guys went to Bangladesh itself and found a safe haven just because there were hostile governments ready to support them. This again shows that no insurgent or terrorist is truly interested in the cause that they are fighting for. They simply use these causes as an excuse for their own political agendas. They don't really care about the Assamese people or their rights. If they did, they would have fought for the issue through different methods, right? By resorting to violence and terrorism, they were simply establishing their dominating political control, right? So they ran away from India, took shelter in Bangladesh itself, right? And got support from the hostile Bangladeshi government, along with support from Pakistani state agencies. Pakistan's ISI, along with the hostile Bangladeshi government, would conveniently give support to Ulfa. And that is how Ulfa became a notorious organization for India. It easily procured arms and weapons. It became one of the well-funded organizations in the region. And from Golden Triangle, it got hold of some advanced weaponry, including rocket-propelled grenades or RPGs, advanced assault rifles. It even learned advanced bomb-making skills, which obviously was provided by Pakistan and Bangladesh. Right? State support existed. Their intelligence agencies were backing them. So, equipped with all these skills and weapons and funds, it mounted major attacks against India, especially in Assam and even across different parts of Northeast India. It even aligned with few other insurgents. Some of the insurgents here, they have often aligned with each other. They have supported each other with regard to logistics, funds, and weapons. Like NSCN would align with Ulfa if needed. Even though ideology and cause is different, they'll come together to share the resources, right? To share the drug routes, to procure arms and weapons. In that regard, in logistical support, some of the insurgent groups have often worked with each other. So for 3 decades, Ulfa thrived in Bangladesh and kept targeting India, and it caused major attacks in Assam. Is that clear? So that is why India has designated Ulfa as a terrorist outfit under UAPA. Even though technically it's an insurgent group, we have clearly labeled it as a terrorist organization. But India saw a breakthrough. We saw a major breakthrough in 2009-10 thanks to Sheikh Hasina's government in Bangladesh. It's the same point which we discussed under Naga insurgency. As soon as Sheikh Hasina came to power, she launched a crackdown on all the Northeast insurgents hiding in her country, and her government destroyed Ulfa with support from the Indian government under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. IB and RAW played a critical role in aiding Bangladesh with the right intelligence. We secured the border as well to prevent any crossover. And inside Bangladesh, the Bangladeshi forces, they crushed Ulfa, destroyed their safe camps and havens, and Arvind Rajkova was even handed over to India. The top leaders of Ulfa, they were all detained by Bangladesh. Some were killed as well, and Arvind Rajkova was handed over to India. That was a very big success for India-Bangladesh relations. This is how Ulfa was brought down by India. Thanks to the help from Bangladesh and the efforts of our Indian security agencies, Ulfa was brought down in 2009, and currently it has signed a suspension of operations agreement with the government of India. All right. 2 years after its decimation, it was forced to sign the suspension of operations agreement. It means they're suspending their operations. They're calling a ceasefire. Suspension of operations agreement is nothing but a ceasefire. They've agreed to hold the fire, stop all their operations. They have surrendered. They have laid down their arms. And they are awaiting trial, and they're also awaiting a possible peace process. The terrorists will be punished. They'll not be spared. Those who have been involved in acts of terrorism, they'll be dealt the strictest of punishment. The cases are going on. The rest might be spared. They might be pardoned. And we're also thinking of a peace process if needed in the future. As of now, nothing has started. Only the suspension of operations agreement was signed in 2011, and things have remained as it is. So Ulfa's movement has come to an end as far as the operations in India and Bangladesh are concerned. But however, there is another branch of Ulfa called Ulfa I, Ulfa Independent. This is a small faction of Ulfa. It's a notorious outfit headed by a terrorist called Paresh Barua. Paresh Barua was one of the founders of Ulfa along with Arvind Rajkova. He was one of the leaders of Assam agitation. This terrorist has been hiding in Myanmar. If the main Ulfa was in Bangladesh under Arvind Rajkova, the faction, the independent faction, Ulfa I, was hiding in Myanmar under Paresh Barua's leadership. This group survives. It is operating near the Chinese border, China-Myanmar border. Right? Myanmar shares this boundary with Yunnan province of China. Along these borders, Paresh Barua has been seen, noted by Indian intelligence agencies. Indian intelligence agencies have spotted Paresh Barua and his group operating in the jungles of Myanmar-China border, and their presence has been noted in the Yunnan province of China, which clearly means there is Chinese state support. Chinese intelligence agencies are backing Paresh Barua and this faction, and it continues its war against India. It has carried out some attacks in the Northeast. You might have heard about some kidnappings and few minor incidents in Northeast India, right? These have been carried out by Ulfa Independent. In Arunachal Pradesh, few workers in a oil rig, in a oil plant. They were kidnapped by terrorists and released later. Some of you might have heard about this incident, right? And some businesses in Arunachal Pradesh and Assam have been threatened. Someone is extorting money from them. All these activities are by Paresh Barua, his outfit called Ulfa Independent. It continues to operate along the Chinese border, reportedly with a presence in Yunnan province as well, which clearly leads India to believe that Chinese intelligence is backing this outfit. So it remains in a state of war with India, but the main faction has been defeated. They've signed the suspension of operations agreement and they've ended all their operations. And Ulfa's story is almost over. Its insurgency is almost over. Understood? So this is the status with Ulfa's insurgency. Now I think we can take a short break, right? Because before I start with the next discussion, it's better we take a break. I'll need some time to cover the next few topics. So let's take a 15 minutes break. We'll come back in 15 minutes. All right. And then we'll discuss a few related topics. There's Bodo insurgency and other insurgent movements. So let's cover all of this, finish Assam, and then look at other smaller topics. Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura, they are much smaller topics compared to Nagaland and Assam. So please come back in 15 minutes and then we'll start the discussion. Break, we completed Ulfa's insurgency in Assam. Now, related to that, I would like to point out one incident which happened in 2012. Remember, I told you that the problem of illegal migration, which has been witnessed in Assam, has led to communal stereotyping, leading to communal polarization on the ground. Several local organizations, the regional political parties, they've added a communal color to it by projecting that all the illegal migrants are Bengali Muslims. This has led to the introduction of a communal angle to the issue, where even Indian Muslims are targeted and branded as Bangladeshi illegal migrants. This is a very disturbing development that we have seen, and insurgent groups like Ulfa and especially Bodo insurgents, they have targeted outsiders. They have opposed the outsiders, they have opposed illegal migration, and they have carried out brutal attacks against Muslim communities and later branded them as Bangladeshi migrants. Bodo insurgents have been very notorious in Assam. We'll discuss Bodo insurgency in detail, I'll come to it. But I want to highlight one particular incident that happened in 2012 in Kokrajhar. In the Kokrajhar district, large-scale communal riots took place in 2012, where Bodo insurgents, they targeted local Muslim villages. Many of them were actually Indian Muslims, genuine Indian citizens. They committed atrocities against these Muslim villages and branded them as Bangladeshi illegal migrants. Even if they were illegal migrants, right? Such violence and atrocity is not excusable. It's not tolerable in any country, in any society. Following these large-scale communal riots that happened, there was a widespread protest that happened across the country against these communal riots in Kokrajhar. In Mumbai's Azad Maidan, counter protests were organized by few Muslim organizations, which increased tensions and led to some riots as well. So at this point in 2012, tensions were very high in Northeast India and also in some other parts of India. So during this sensitive time, a fake WhatsApp message and a fake SMS started circulating. Remember, just back in 2011, 2012, social media was becoming a rage. Facebook WhatsApp, they were all making a big presence. The usage of social media was rising post 2010. And following the Kokrajhar riots between Bodos and the Muslims of Kokrajhar, tensions had increased across the country as well. And this fake message went viral, a fake rumor. It went as a text message as well as a SMS and also on WhatsApp. This message claimed that Muslim organizations across India are looking to target the Northeast community in retaliation for Kokrajhar riots. This was absolutely fake. There was no basis for this claim. It was a rumor, a fake message being circulated on social media. But the message went viral and it had a real impact on the ground. It led to an exodus of Northeast students and workers from across India because the Northeast community, they felt threatened that there would actually be attacks against them following the Kokrajhar riots. Because in many Indian cities, from Delhi to Hyderabad to Bangalore, right, there are many students from Northeast India, workers from Northeast India who have settled, who have migrated and settled. Once the message went viral, back then people would believe everything that they would read on social media. Not just then, even now, you have many people who believe everything that they read on WhatsApp, right? So they assumed that this was a real message, a real threat, and it triggered a fear element amongst the Northeast community. So out of fear of being targeted, they started leaving Indian cities overnight. It led to an exodus. As the message went viral, airports, railway stations, bus stands, they were overcrowded by students and workers from Northeast India who are settled in different parts of the country. They started leaving the cities and going back to their places, their hometowns in Northeast India. Fortunately, nothing untoward happened. There was no violence or no incident on the ground, but you could see the impact that a fake message on social media could have. Now, I'm highlighting this incident because it gives you an idea about the impact of misuse of social media platforms. If social media platforms and communication networks like mobile phones, if they are misused, if the internet is misused to spread fake news, to spread rumors, this could have a real world impact. Fortunately, this incident only led to an exodus where the students and workers, they fled from cities and went back to their hometowns. If something untoward had happened, right, even if one small incident had occurred, this would have possibly triggered widespread riots and social chaos. This was our first experience, India's first experience with the misuse of social media, where there was a real threat in the real world. Is that clear? Following this, India started looking at social media more seriously. At the global level as well, there were many such instances where social media was being used to organize riots, to trigger communal divides, to exploit the social divisions, leading to breakdown of law and order. So government started realizing in 2011, 2012 that misuse of social media and the internet could create major security problems. It could threaten the security of the state. That is why UPSC added this topic as an entire chapter in internal security. Next year, in 2013, the UPSC mains exam format and syllabus was revised and updated. So in the new syllabus and format, internal security was added as a new subject. And under the subject, a separate chapter was added regarding misuse of media and social media and how it threatens our internal security. This was primarily motivated by this incident and other global incidents as well, where similarly social media was being misused to create security challenges. So since it is a connected incident, I thought you should know about it. You should be familiar with how social media platforms can be misused. Is that clear? So we will study Bodo insurgency. Later we'll come to it. We will discuss the root cause of Bodo insurgency. We'll examine all the issues related to Bodo insurgency. But just knowing that there is a communal angle to the problem of illegal migration is very important. because this makes the issue even more sensitive, right? There are these extremist insurgent groups like Bodos and even Ulfa at one point. They have targeted outsiders, and in the name of targeting outsiders, they have targeted Muslims in the region. So the communalization of the issue creates even more security challenges for India, right? It could lead to such situations where clashes and riots might break out between different communities, thereby threatening the stability of the Indian state. Is that clear? Now, let's talk about another set of insurgencies and extremist movements that has been witnessed in Assam, where the demand of the insurgents has been statehood within India. If Ulfa was a separatist group demanding independence from India, there have been other insurgencies in Assam which have tried to form a separate state for themselves, just breaking apart from India, from Assam, but not from India. Meaning they wanted a separate state for themselves. All right. These demands have come from different tribal communities in Assam, the minority tribes like Bodos, the Karbis from Karbi Anglong region, the Dimasas from Dima Hasao region, Koch Rajbanshis from parts of West Bengal and Assam, right? Bodos from the Bodo areas of Assam. These native communities, ethnic tribal communities, they've all had their own violent insurgent extremist movements. Some of them have just demanded statehood, meaning they want their areas to be carved out of Assam, to be separated from Assam, and to be formed as a separate state within India. All right. So such statehood movements also have been witnessed, which has had a connection with insurgency and extremism. Especially after Telangana was carved out from Andhra Pradesh following violent protests, right? After the government caved into the pressure and carved out Telangana as a separate state, these demands increased because we had seen such demands back in 1980s and 1990s as well. Even during this period, statehood demands have existed in Assam because some of the minority tribes, all of them, they have felt threatened by the Assamese, who are the dominant group. As Assamese have been dominant in Assam, the minority tribes from some of these minority districts, these tribal districts, they have opposed the Assamese. They felt they have been discriminated by the Assam government, right? They feel they have been oppressed as well. So as a result, these tribal groups, they have started their own insurgent movements. Sometimes they have demanded statehood. Sometimes they have demanded independence from India as well. Like Bodos, for example. There were Bodo groups which were asking only for statehood within India. They didn't want independence. They wanted to break out of Assam. There were some Bodo extremist groups which we are going to look at. They just wanted to break out the Bodo areas from Assam and form a separate state, but within Indian sovereignty. There were other Bodo insurgents who wanted complete independence from India itself. So all kinds of separatist activity has been seen in Assam, from demand for statehood to outright separatism. Is that clear? If you look at the Koch Rajbanshis, they have demanded the creation of Kamtapur. They even had a extremist organization called Kamtapur Liberation Organization, or the KLO. The Kamtapur Liberation Organization. All right. Kamtapur is reference to a princely state that existed prior independence. It is home to Koch Rajbanshi community, which you find in northern West Bengal and in parts of Assam. All right. That's where you find the Koch Rajbanshis. They have fought for either independence or separate state as well, and they have led an insurgent movement against India called KLO, Kamtapur Liberation Organization. Now, this group is in news recently. The group was back in news because the leader of KLO, who was hiding in Myanmar, he has returned back to India. He crossed the border from Myanmar and surrendered in Nagaland, surrendered in front of Assam Rifles in Nagaland. And there are rumors that he has come back at the request of the Indian government. Most likely, Government of India is looking to start a peace process to resolve the Kamtapur issue. There are reports, it's not confirmed yet. We don't know the entire details. It's not there in the public domain. It's all classified. But KLO was recently in news just few months ago. The leader of KLO, he was hiding in Myanmar. He crossed the border voluntarily with some of his cadres and surrendered in front of Assam Rifles. And after surrendering, he has been taken to New Delhi. Media reports are indicating a potential peace process going on between Indian government and KLO, and some kind of settlement might be worked out to resolve the issue of Coach Rajbanshis. Maybe India might agree for some kind of autonomy, maybe constitutional autonomy. There are also rumors that a new state might be created by carving out areas from West Bengal and Assam. A new state called Kamtapur might be created, but this is all rumors again, right? But anything is possible, so please pay attention to this topic. This is still a developing story. We don't know much about it because initial negotiations will always be classified in case of such sensitive issues. All right, but the leader has returned on his own, and there are reports that Indian intelligence agencies contacted him, right, asking him to come back as India is ready for a peace process to resolve the Kamtapur issue. Whereas Karbis and Dimasas and the Bodos, their issues have been settled. Most of their insurgencies have come to an end, and we have provided constitutional autonomy to Bodo areas, the Karbi, Anglong region, and Dimasa region. All right. So, under the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution, that provides for flexibility, where autonomy can be granted to tribal areas in Assam, in Tripura, and also in Meghalaya and Mizoram. In these 4 northeastern states, tribal districts can be provided with constitutional autonomy under the 6th schedule to satisfy the demands of the tribes, to provide for protection of tribal rights, to protect tribal land, to protect tribal culture and customs. Such autonomy can be given within the Indian Constitution, which helps in curbing such separatist insurgent movements. This is the flexibility of the Indian Constitution. Just like 5th schedule provides for some special provisions for administration of scheduled areas or tribal areas in other states, right? Similarly, 6th schedule provides for autonomy in Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya, and Mizoram, where tribal districts can be given complete autonomy. Understood? It helps in pacifying the demands for statehood and other such demands, which could have led to violent insurgencies against the state. So, through this autonomy, we can provide legislative autonomy, meaning all the laws passed by Parliament and the state legislature will not apply to the autonomous areas. In these autonomous districts, autonomous administrative councils will be set up, which will have constitutional powers. All right. So laws passed by the Parliament and state legislature will not automatically apply, and it will have to be approved by the autonomous councils in order to extend the laws. In many ways, it is similar to the special status that was given to Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370, where state legislature had to approve the parliamentary laws to make it applicable in J&K. Almost on similar lines, such legislative autonomy is given. Even executive administrative autonomy with regard to implementing some welfare schemes and government schemes. They even have financial autonomy to raise their own taxes, to manage their own revenue and expenditure at the district level. These tribal districts, they are provided with such autonomy under 6th schedule, and autonomous district councils are set up to administer these tribal districts. To administer these 6th schedule districts, autonomous district councils are constituted with constitutional recognition. All right. So in Assam, we have these 3 autonomous councils that have been formed. The Bodoland Territorial Council, or BTC, which administers the Bodo areas with constitutional status. Karbi Anglong Autonomous Council for the Karbi Anglong district, which is home to the minority tribe, the Karbi tribe, and the Dima Hasao Autonomous District Council for the Dima Hasao region to provide for the welfare of the Dima Hasao, the Dima Hasao community. These are the three autonomous areas in Assam. All right. So the powers of center and state will be restricted in these autonomous territories. With regard to some subjects like land, then civil laws, laws related to marriage, inheritance, even some judicial powers, right? Because some tribes, they have their own judicial systems, they have their own civil laws as well. They have their own customs, which defines the practices related to marriage, adoption, inheritance, etc. So to protect the unique tribal culture, their language, to protect tribal land and protect their resources, the opportunity is given to them to look after their own administration. These autonomous district councils, they will have their own local elections. All right. And in few subjects, legislative, executive, financial, and even judicial powers are devolved to these autonomous councils. The powers are devolved to the autonomous councils. However, state will exercise jurisdiction in other matters, in other key matters like police and law and order. Center will also exercise its jurisdiction with regard to communication, defense, security, and all these other big subjects. Only in few subjects related to welfare, land, education, healthcare, right? The local civil practices and customs. In these matters, powers are given to the councils so that the local tribe leaders who get elected in the local elections, they can look after the local administration. They can provide for protection of tribal rights and land and resources and thus protect the tribal community. So this is the beauty of the Indian Constitution. It provides these flexible options where when such demands are present, which turns into violence and insurgency and even terrorism, we can curb them by making concessions. Without affecting our sovereignty, by keeping those areas within India's sovereignty, we can provide administrative, legislative, financial, and judicial autonomy and give them constitutional status so that the local tribes can look after their own administration and thus protect their rights and well-being. Is that clear? Any idea how many autonomous councils are established under 6th schedule? What's the total number? I told you that there are 3 in Assam. What could be the total if you take Tripura, Meghalaya, and Mizoram? How many autonomous councils are there under 6th schedule? You would have read this in polity, right? It shows how you're preparing, right? Because polity classes, I think, are done. Some are saying 18, 50, 12. Few students have got it right. Gansham, Rashmi, and Kirtana. Very good. There are 10 autonomous district councils in India. Please remember this. Take it as homework as well. I want you guys to find out the names of all the 10 autonomous district councils that are set up under 6th schedule. We have few in Meghalaya, few in Tripura, few in Mizoram. So in total, including Assam, we have 10 autonomous district councils. All right. They're all provided for different tribal communities in these 4 states. And they enjoy these powers, these limited autonomous powers, so that they can look after tribal welfare. They can protect tribal land and ensure that their culture, their identity is protected. This is a constitutional way of curbing such local tendencies, providing some flexibility in administration, and it will not lead to enforcement of authority from the state and center. Because in some subjects where powers are devolved, the powers of state and center gets restricted. All right, in these key areas, the powers of the state government and central government get restricted, thereby allowing the tribal community to form their own laws and policies to protect themselves and to protect their rights. Do you know that there is one more region in India which is demanding similar autonomy under 6th schedule? Do you know which region is it? there is another region in India fighting for constitutional autonomy. Recently, it was in news as well. There is a region which has carried out protests. It has carried out major protests asking for constitutional autonomy under 6th schedule. Some are saying Gorkha land. Gorkha land, actually, they are demanding a separate state itself in the Darjeeling area. Right? So Gorkha land movement, they're not demanding constitutional autonomy. They are demanding statehood. They want a separate state. The correct answer is Ladakh. Very good. Many of you have got it right. Very good. See, right now, Ladakh, the Union Territory, it has legal autonomy. There is a law which has been passed through which limited autonomy has already been provided, but not under the constitution, not under 6th schedule. So people of Ladakh have recently protested. In the Leh region, the Buddhists, and in Kargil region, the Muslims, they've all united to protest, and they've asked for constitutional autonomy under 6th schedule because they feel that Ladakh is getting neglected after becoming a union territory. They feel that Ladakh's development is being compromised. The unique needs of Ladakh, people of Ladakh, is not being met. So protests have started asking to turn the legal autonomy which has been given, to turn that into constitutional status under 6th schedule. Understood? Now, as part of this small exercise I have given to you, read about the provisions of 6th schedule. I have given you some points in the next 2 slides. This is actually a polity topic. That's why I don't want to get into it. But I've given you an idea as to what it deals with. Right? It is connected to Northeast India. It's related to Northeast insurgency as well. It's one option, one flexible option through which we have dealt with insurgencies. So please read about this. Take this as homework. Read about the provisions of 6th schedule and read about the shortcomings of 6th schedule. There are some problems associated with 6th schedule of the constitution. In implementing it, there are some problems which have come up. There are few flaws which have been highlighted by many experts. All right. But it definitely has helped in curbing the local tendencies for separatism and such armed violent movements. So please read about this from polity. Understand all the key provisions, what unique provisions are provided, what kind of autonomy is given, how elections happen, right? Does Panchayati Raj system exist in these areas? All right. And what are the problems associated with the 6th schedule autonomous councils? Has it been completely effective in improving administration and governance? So read about all these points from polity and governance and take this as homework for you. All right. It's not directly part of internal security. That's why I'm assigning it to you. It's a polity topic, but connected with what we are discussing. So please put in this effort. It will hardly take 20 to 30 minutes, not more than that. It's a small topic. Trust me, it's very, very important. Similarly, I had asked you to read more about 5th schedule with regard to scheduled areas. Right? When we covered Naxalism, when we discussed tribal welfare in the tribal districts, I had mentioned 5th schedule as well. So both the schedules are relevant from internal security perspective, as it helps in tribal welfare and helps in curbing these extremist movements. This is a governance measure. Right? Through these constitutional provisions, we can improve governance, provide better development, and thus tackle extremism. So from this angle, I want all of you to read about 6th and 5th schedule and understand how it plays a role in improving tribal welfare. All right, it's a polity governance topic connected closely with internal security. So kindly take this as homework, and I expect all of you to sincerely do this exercise and read about these provisions. Got it? Now, coming to the last topic in Assam, the last insurgency, the Bodo insurgency. Let's talk about this in detail. It's a slightly big topic. It's very important as well. And recently, there have been developments related to Bodo insurgency. In 2020, we ended Bodo insurgency in all its forms. India has successfully brought Bodo insurgency to a complete end by signing the third Bodo Peace Accord. This is one of the achievements of the Modi government in Northeast India. It brings greater stability to Assam and Bodo areas, as all forms of Bodo insurgency has come to a complete end with the signing of third Bodo Accord. So that is why the topic becomes very important, and UPSC is yet to ask a question on this. Even though it's from 3 years old, even it's a slightly old topic, it still remains relevant because the resolution of this insurgency has a lot of benefit for stabilizing Assam and Northeast India. So you should know who are the Bodos, where can you find them? Why did the insurgency start? What was their demand? What were the different Bodo insurgent groups? What were they fighting for? What threat did they pose to India? And how did India tackle them? How did we achieve a resolution by signing these peace accords? If the third accord was signed, it also means there are two more accords, the first and second Bodo Accord. Why were three accords needed? These are the basics you need to understand, and you can get a mains question on these lines. Is that clear? You can even expect a prelims question on Bodo community, as they represent a major tribal community in Assam. The Bodos, they are an ethno-linguistic community found in the northwestern part of Assam. I'll show you the map. I'll show you exactly where Bodos can be found. In the Brahmaputra Valley, in the northern areas of the Brahmaputra Valley, there are 4 districts in northwestern Assam. That is where you find the Bodo community. They are an ethno-linguistic community, meaning they are an ethnic group, a unique ethnic group of Tibetan origin, and they speak a unique language, which is the Bodo language. So the cultural identity of this community, comes from the fact that Bodos are a distinct ethnic group and they speak a distinct language which is integral to their cultural identity. Is that clear? So let's look at the map. Let me show you where the Bodos can be found. See, this is the region. Now, this is where roughly Brahmaputra river flows. Roughly the Brahmaputra river flows here. So in the Brahmaputra Valley, in the northern areas here, which is the northwestern part of Assam, this is where Bodos are found. They are native to this region. All right, this is the Bodo inhabited area. There are 4 districts, which includes Kokrajhar, which I was mentioning earlier, where communal riots broke out between Bodo insurgents and Muslim villages. Then Chirang, Udalguri, and Baksa. These are the 4 Bodo districts in Assam. Now let us understand why the insurgency started and what were their demands. The Bodos, they've always felt that they have been dominated and oppressed by the Assamese. The Assamese who are dominant in Assam, they have been blamed for discriminating against the Bodo minorities. Essentially, it's an inter-ethnic rivalry. The cause is within the state. It's nothing to do with the Indian government or any other external cause. When you have so many indigenous communities, which are all very protective of their land and culture, there will be these rivalries between different groups, which causes violence and leads to insurgency as well. Right? So the Bodos who are in minority, they have always alleged that the Assamese have discriminated against them. They have oppressed them. Most Assam governments should be dominated by Assamese leaders, parties which are favoring Assamese. So in government policies, in state government policies, there is an alleged discrimination against the Bodos. And this is genuine to an extent. It's not entirely genuine, but yes, there are some genuine concerns. For example, Bodo language was not given equal treatment on par with Assamese language. I told you that Bodo language is integral to their identity. Their language was not given the same treatment and same respect as Assamese was given. The Assamese language was enforced on them. So in that regard, there has been some genuine root cause. Also, Bodo areas, they remained backward for many decades, even after independence. While rest of Assam was developing, especially the Guwahati area and the other part of Brahmaputra Valley was developing, which is the areas of the Assamese, the Bodo areas were slightly left behind with regard to their development and progress. All right. And historically, Bodos have many issues as well in the region. The region is home to many tea plantations. So they have many historical issues dating back to colonial times. So they felt that none of these issues were addressed post-independence. And especially under the state government, which was dominated by Assamese, they felt that they were being discriminated and being left out. They felt their language was being disrespected. They felt their rights was not being protected by the state government. So this became the root cause for Bodo insurgency to break out in the mid 1980s. That is where few Bodo groups were formed, which wanted to create Bodo land. All right. And the demand of these Bodo groups, they have varied. There have been certain groups which have asked for autonomy under 6th schedule, meaning they just wanted constitutional autonomy. They didn't want independence from India. They didn't want a separate state. They just wanted autonomy within Assam, like Karbis and Dimasas got autonomy. There were other extremist groups which wanted a separate state. They wanted Bodo areas to be carved out of Assam and a separate state called Bodoland to be formed. But there were other notorious terrorist organizations which were leading a separatist war against India itself, calling for breakout of Bodo areas to form a separate country called Bodoland. So all three types of extremism has been seen, from demands for autonomy to statehood to complete separatism. All three demands have come from different Bodo groups. Within the Bodos, there have been different extremist insurgent outfits, and they have raised these different demands over the years. Is that clear? So in the mid 1980s, a dangerous terror organization was formed, a secessionist outfit, a separatist outfit was formed called the BDSF, the Bodo Security Force. It was established by a notorious terrorist, Ranjan Daimari. Again, technically, all these groups are insurgents. Academically speaking, these are insurgent groups. If you look at their structure, the way they operate, they're all insurgents. But because of the brutal violence they have carried out, the atrocities they have committed here, right, the threat they have posed to India, they've all been labeled as terrorist organizations and they have been proscribed under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So BDSF, the Bodo Security Force established by Ranjan Daimari, became a notorious terrorist organization in Assam, established in the mid 1980s. Now, BDSF, which claimed to fight for Bodos, it obviously wanted independence. Its goal was to break away from India itself. And it would target outsiders. Any outsider, any non-Bodo would be a target for this outfit. Is that clear? So this group has targeted the Assamese because their primary anger is against the Assamese, right? And they have targeted migrant workers found in Bodo areas. Remember, I told you the area is filled with tea plantations since the British days. It's right next to Darjeeling area, if you noticed, which is known for the world famous Darjeeling tea. The British identified this lucrative spot. They commercialized it and they expanded their tea plantations across Darjeeling towards the Bodo areas, towards Assam. To run the tea plantations, the British had brought migrant workers from the outside. From central India, they had brought few tribes and settled them here in the Bodo areas to make them work in the plantations. Any idea which tribe from central India could have been brought here? Does anyone know? The British brought migrant workers from which tribe and settled them in Bodo areas? Ravi and Dood Kula has given the good right answer. Very good. The Santals primarily, and even some Mundas and Gond. Primarily, it's the Santals. Most of them who were brought here during colonial period, they were Santals. There were some from the Munda and the Gond tribal community as well. The British were the ones who brought them here, settled them here, because they needed cheap plantation labor to run their tea plantations. So these migrant workers have remained here from several generations, but they are seen as outsiders by the Bodos. The Bodos have hated them. They have carried out targeted discrimination against them, and BDSF primarily started targeting these tea plantation workers. Some of you might have read about this. You might have seen in some movies as well, where insurgents are targeting plantation workers. It's a major problem that Assam had faced back in 1980s, 1990s. It was the Bodo group by Ranjan Daimeri, the BDSF, which was committing these brutal atrocities. Later, they started targeting Bangladeshi illegal migrants. They started targeting any Bengali speaker. They wouldn't care whether they are truly illegal migrants. But since they had an agenda against outsiders, they would target any Muslim or any Bengali speaker and then brand them as a Bangladeshi Muslim who is an illegal migrant. This is the atrocity Ranjan Daimeri's terror group has carried out. It's one of the most notorious outfits. It later was renamed and restructured in 1994 as NDFB. You might recognize this name instead of BDSF. BDSF is the older name. The organization was restructured and renamed in 94, and it's called the NDFB, the National Democratic Front of Bodoland. It's ironic they use the word democratic in their name. They are nothing but democratic. This group has committed brutal violence against Muslims in Assam. It has targeted brutal violence against Bengalis, right? Because see, in Assam, you have native Bengali speakers, right? Bengali speakers are spread out across this region. Even in Odisha, you'll find Bengali speakers, right? In West Bengal, in Assam as well. There could be Muslims who speak Bengali, who are Indian citizens. But this terror group would target Bengalis and Muslims and brand them as illegal migrants. Even if they were from Bangladesh, even if they were illegal migrants, such violence cannot be justified. This group started carrying out these brutal attacks throughout 1990s. All right. But India had reached out to the Bodo groups, to the other Bodo groups, which I was mentioning. There were Bodo political groups as well, which were not resorting to violence like BDSF. They just wanted autonomy. They were not asking for statehood. They were not asking for independence. They had a more reasonable demand, which was to gain autonomy for their areas, to look after their own administration so that they could protect their rights. This was seen as a more reasonable demand, and India reached out to these Bodo political groups, and in 1993, we had signed the first Bodo Accord. To tackle the resentment and to satisfy the local demands, right? India had worked out the first Bodo Accord and signed this agreement with the more reasonable political groups who wanted autonomy, and accordingly, Bodo Land Autonomous Council had been set up. All right? But please remember, this was not under 6th schedule. It was not constitutional autonomy which was given initially. Please make a note of this point. It's very, very important. Autonomy was given, legal autonomy, like Ladakh. Like Ladakh has some legal autonomy through a legal provision. Similarly, Bodo areas were given autonomy by India through the first Bodo Accord, which we signed with the political groups. But it was not under 6th schedule. It was not constitutional autonomy. Few limited powers were devolved so that the Bodo groups can look after their own administration and their welfare. but BDSF rejected the accord. As it was a terrorist group, Ranjan Daimari rejected the accord. That is when he restructured his terror group, renamed the organization as NDFB, and started committing brutal attacks in the Bodo areas and non-Bodo areas. Throughout 1990s, this terrorist organization has killed hundreds of people in Assam. It has targeted the Assam government and Assam police. It has targeted Assam Rifles and Indian Army. It has attacked the Bengali speakers and Muslims in the region and any non-Bodo community, including the migrant workers from central India who work in tea plantations. They've all been targeted and attacked by this notorious terrorist organization. It's one of the most brutal organizations we have seen in India. And guess what? This group, for all its hatred against outsiders, finally hid in Bangladesh. It took a safe haven in Bangladesh, which again exposes the hypocrisy of these terrorists. Just like Ulfa also hid in Bangladesh, once we started targeting them, right? ASPA was of course implemented here. So under the special powers, Indian Army, Assam Rifles and Assam Police, they started hunting this group. Ranjan Daimari was a prime target for India. So as we stepped up our counterinsurgency operations, they ran away from India and went to the very same country illegally as terrorists and set up a terror sanctuary there. But here in India, they were targeting Bangladeshi illegal migrants. Look at the hypocrisy of this, the irony of this. So these terror groups, they're not truly interested in the welfare of their community. They don't really care about it. They use violence and atrocities to establish their political and economic influence. Eventually, all these terrorists here, they have their own illegal criminal businesses. From extortion to drugs to weapons, that's what they deal with. They want to run these illegal businesses, make money, and establish their political dominance, right? And they use terrorism. They bring out a so-called agenda, which is a hollow agenda. If they were true to their agenda, why would they go hide in Bangladesh? If they were targeting Bangladeshis, if Bangladesh was a problem for them, why would they take shelter in Bangladesh? Just because they were getting support from Pakistan and hostile Bangladeshi government, they hid in Bangladesh and scaled up their operations against India. So along with NSCN and ULFA, NDFB was the other terror group hosted in Bangladesh by the hostile governments with Pakistani support. So in 1990s, the NDFB became a major threat for India. Because of the scale of violence it was carrying out, it became a major threat for India. And we saw the emergence of a rival group as a result of this, called Bodo Liberation Tiger Force, or BLTF. See, within Bodos, there are a lot of divisions. I know for some this might seem confusing. Since there are different divisions within the Bodos, they have different groups and they have different demands. As we discussed, some political groups which were moderate and peaceful, they only wanted autonomy, not even constitutional autonomy. They wanted some basic autonomy, which was satisfied under First Bodo Accord. There were other groups which engaged in insurgency and violence, but they wanted statehood or at least constitutional autonomy. They wanted statehood or constitutional autonomy to protect their welfare and rights. But there were others like NDFB, which outright wanted independence from India, and they engaged in open terrorism against India and other communities. So as NDFB became more and more brutal, by 95-96, NDFB was committing major acts of terrorism, which was destabilizing the whole state. A rival faction of Bodos, they formed another group. Another new insurgent group, Bodo insurgent group, was formed by the rival faction called BLTF, Bodo Liberation Tiger Force. Now this outfit, the BLTF, right, it was countering NDFB's agenda. They were direct rivals of each other. If NDFB wanted independence, right, BLTF focused on autonomy. under India's sovereignty itself. This was the prime difference between these groups. But it's alleged, it's widely believed that BLTF was propped, set up and supported by Indian intelligence agencies as part of their covert operation against NDFB. There are very strong reports that this was an Indian operation in order to target NDFB, weaken NDFB and break it down. It's said, it's believed that Indian intelligence agencies led by IB and RAW, along with collaboration with Indian Army and Assam Rifles, we propped some of the Bodos, supported them to form a new armed group called BLTF so that they will target NDFB. They will weaken the terrorism of NDFB and help us in bringing the Bodo crisis to an end. These are unconfirmed again, but there are some records, there are verifiable records which show that this could be true. All right, but again, we can't 100% verify this. These covert operations will remain classified. Government will never acknowledge it. The other major difference you find between these two groups is that NDFB was Christian dominated. This was another Northeast insurgent outfit which was inspired by left-wing extremist political ideology, but with a connection to religion. If ever it created Bodo land, it wanted the Bodo land to be a Christian country, just like NSCN. The BLTF, which came up as a rival group, was a Hindu-dominated outfit. Again, a left-wing extremist outfit with regard to its agenda and politics and structure, but connection with religion. So within the Bodos, right, a division had come up between the Hindus and the Christians. There was a polarization that had happened. This is what led to the formation of these rival groups. BLTF would also engage in insurgency and violence. Its demand was autonomy. Constitutional autonomy was the prime demand. But it opposed NDFB, the Christian-dominated group, and they started targeting each other. Both the groups would start attacking each other. This is what gives rise to rumors that most likely Indian intelligence agencies were supporting BLTF as a covert strategy to break down NDFB, which was hiding in Bangladesh. Is that clear? In the middle of all this, the migrant workers that we were talking about, the tribal workers in tea plantations, they formed their own outfit to protect themselves called Bengali Tiger Force. The migrant workers and the Bengalis here who are being targeted by NDFB, they all came together, the tea plantation workers from Santal Munda tribes and the Bengali speakers in the region. Since they were being targeted, as they were non-Bodos, they were being targeted by NDFB, they formed another group called Bengali Tiger Force to protect their community, to defend themselves against Bodo attacks. So BLTF aligned with the Bengali Tiger Force and jointly they started targeting NDFB. This was an internal war, an internal conflict within the Bodo areas. Is that clear? So as a result, violence escalated in late 90s and until early 2000, these rivalries persisted in Bodo areas where NDFB was targeting all the non-Bodos and pushing for independence and forming a Christian nation. But it was being countered by BLTF, which was a Hindu-dominated outfit, along with Bengali Tiger Force, which had been formed to defend the non-Bodos, the Bengalis and the migrant workers. So this internal fight caused large-scale violence in Assam, and finally, India struck the second accord. The second Bodo Accord was worked out in 2003, through which the BLTF surrendered and ended its war in the region. It signed the accord with the government, central and state governments. It completely surrendered. It agreed for a ceasefire, gave up its armed struggle, and following this, India introduced a major change. We provided constitutional autonomy to satisfy the BLTF. And this autonomous council, which was already created in 93, it was given constitutional status under the 6th schedule. Is that clear? This is how the the Bodo Autonomous Council finally got constitutional autonomy. The BTC, the Bodo Territorial Council, which administers the Bodo Autonomous Area, it was given constitutional autonomy under the 6th schedule of the Constitution. This was the concession India made to ensure that BLTF surrendered and reduced its violence in the region. All right. So, second Bodo Accord brought some peace and stability into the region. Now, the only group that was left was your NDFB. So, NDFB continued its terrorism from Bangladesh. Different factions of NDFB also came up. There were different splits that happened, leading to different branches of NDFB. But in 2009-10, when Sheikh Hasina cracked down on these groups, NDFB was disseminated by Bangladesh and India. Thanks to the support we got from the Bangladeshi government, we destroyed these outfits. Several top terrorists were killed. Many were arrested. And Ranjan Daimari, the leader of all these terror organizations, was finally brought back to India, and he remains in Indian custody. Is that clear? So NDFB was brought down by Indian forces and Indian intelligence agencies thanks to the help we got from Bangladesh. So post 2009-2010, NDFB's terrorism declined. So parallelly, we started a peace process to permanently end this crisis. And it took 10 years for the peace process to finalize. So the government of India, along with the state government, started negotiating with NDFB and all the factions, along with other Bodo groups, political groups, and students' union. We negotiated with all the Bodo representatives, not just with NDFB. Even the political groups, the Autonomous Council, and there are Bodo Students' Union as well. So with all of them, we negotiated and finalized the third Bodo Accord, which was signed in January 2020. All right, this is one of the big achievements of Modi government in stabilizing the Northeast region. Right, it has taken years of effort of the previous governments to contain this crisis. And finally, in 2020, we settled this conflict forever with the third Bodo Accord. So the provisions of the third Bodo Accord might be important. UPSC might ask you to analyze the third Bodo agreement and how it has ended Bodo insurgency. So let's take a quick look. Let's see what are the key provisions. I'll take you through the key provisions and then we can end this discussion. It's formally called as the Comprehensive Bodo Settlement Agreement, and it provides for redrawing and renaming of the autonomous area. The autonomous area, which I showed you in the map, the 4 districts, Kokrajhar, then Udalguri, and the others, they were called as BTAD. That was the previous name of that region, that autonomous region. It was called Bodoland Territorial Area District, which was governed by your BTC under 6th schedule. Is that clear? This was the designation of the territory and the Autonomous Council. The area is called BTAD. That was the old name before the third Bodo Accord. All the 4 districts where autonomy was given under 6th schedule, they are called Bodoland Territorial Area District. This area, comprising of 4 districts, is administered by BTC. That is the local government, the autonomous government under 6th schedule. Now, because of the third accord, this area has been renamed as BTR. Now it's called Bodoland Territorial Region. Now, what is the big deal about this? How will renaming help? I'll explain that in a short while. The territorial area has been redrawn. The boundaries of the autonomous region has been redrawn, and that is why the renaming was necessary. All right. So this change has been carried out through the accord. In a short while, I'll explain why this was necessary, why the redrawing and renaming was needed. Let's look at other provisions. I'll come back to that point. So which were the Bodo groups that we negotiated with? The All Bodo Students Union, the Bodo People's Organization, and all factions of NDFB, including the main outfit headed by Ranjan Daimari. These were the groups that we negotiated the accord with, and it brings the armed movement of NDFB to a complete end. NDFB and all its factions, all of them have surrendered completely. They signed a suspension of operations agreement with the government of India. They have laid down their arms and weapons and they have surrendered in front of the authorities. Within the given deadline, as per the agreement, all the Bodo terrorists, the militants, have surrendered. The whole armed group is now disbanded. It does not exist anymore. Is that clear? So in return for the end of insurgency, India has given a lot of concessions. India has agreed for a lot of concessions within the sixth schedule. And this is how India has brought the insurgency to an end. By giving some concessions, constitutional, financial concessions, to act as an incentive, to provide some flexibility as well to the administration of these areas. And in return, the terror groups have surrendered completely by ending this insurgent war against India. All right. Now let's see, what is this new model of power sharing which has been provided? Why redrawing and renaming was needed? What kind of assistance has been promised by India? Let's understand this in detail. I'll go one by one. There are a few important points to mention. So let's look at them one by one. Point number one, the accord reduces the financial dependency of the Autonomous Council on the state government of Assam. This was a complaint. Even after constitutional autonomy was given in 2003, the Autonomous Council was still dependent on the state government for funds. And the state government was not releasing the funds on time, as there was a political division between the autonomous area and the state government. So the lack of financial independence was affecting the Bodo Autonomous Council. It was affecting its functioning. It was not able to enjoy the true constitutional provisions, and it had become dependent on the state for additional funds. This defeated the very purpose of constitutional autonomy. That is why the government has agreed to reduce the financial dependency of the BTC on the state government. The center is directly providing some financial support to the BDC to reduce its dependency on the state. Next, the territory which I mentioned, the BTAD, this territory is being altered. BTAD has been renamed right now as BTR. And this change in name was needed because the map of the autonomous area has been redrawn. All right, let's understand why the redrawing was needed. Let's go back to the map. By using the map, I can explain why the redrawing was needed. Why the redrawing of boundaries was necessary, and why it led to the renaming of the autonomous area. So this entire region which you're seeing here, all the 4 districts together, right? They were administered by your BTC, the Bodoland Territorial Council. This area which it was administering was called BTAD. This was according to the 2003 accord, the second accord, which had given constitutional autonomy to the region. Now, a problem had come up. The problem was, within BTAD, there were many non-Bodo villages which were also enjoying the benefits of autonomy. See, autonomy given was for Bodo community. Inside the autonomous area, inside BTAD itself, in these 4 districts, there are few non-Bodo villages, and by virtue of being part of BTAD, even they were enjoying the benefits of autonomy. All right? And similarly, outside BTAD, outside these 4 districts, in the nearby areas, there are Bodo villages present, but they don't enjoy the benefits of autonomy because they're not part of autonomous district. This was a discrepancy that existed. I'll repeat the point. In the Bodo area, the BTAD region, where autonomy was given, constitutional autonomy was given, there were a few non-Bodo villages which would also enjoy autonomy. And outside the autonomous area, in the nearby regions, there are Bodo villages, but they don't get autonomy. They don't enjoy the benefits of autonomy because they're not part of BTAD. So this was a demand by Bodos. That is why they wanted the map to be redrawn. They want these areas to be redrawn, and obviously they want the name to be changed as well. That's why BTAD has now been renamed as BTR. So as part of the redrawing exercise, these non-Bodo villages, they have been excluded from the autonomous territory. They don't enjoy the benefits of autonomy. And Bodo villages outside the area, which didn't get any benefit, they are being included in the autonomous territory so they can enjoy the benefits of autonomy. Understood? This is why the redrawing was necessary, and hence the autonomous area has been renamed from BTAD to BTR. All right, this exercise has been completed as well, and the BTC has been empowered to have a say in the appointment of key government officials along with the state government. This further increases the powers of BTC while appointing the DC, the SP, who are IAS, IPS officers. State government was having complete discretion. Now going forward, because of third Bodo Accord, state government cannot appoint on its own. In these 4 districts, if DCs and SPs have to be appointed for the district administration and the district police, state government has to consult with the BTC. It has to consult the autonomous body, consult with Bodoland Territorial Council, and then make the appointments. So this gives BTC greater control in senior appointments of government officials. All right, so this provision also has been included, and the redrawing also has been completed, where Bodo villages that were excluded have been now included, and non-Bodo areas have been excluded. So these are the big changes that have happened under the third Bodo Accord. A committee also has been set up to carry out the redrawing exercise. A committee comprising of Bodos and representatives from state government and central government. Such an inclusive committee was set up to complete the redrawing exercise, to determine which areas to be included, which areas to be excluded. And all these members were also included in the process, in the redrawing process, so that everyone has representation and they can decide together as to which villages will be included, which villages will be excluded. A separate Bodo Kachari Welfare Council has been provided for developing the Bodo villages which were outside BTAD. The Bodo villages outside of BTAD, which haven't got the benefits of autonomy until now, for their welfare, a separate welfare council, a Bodo Kachari Welfare Council, has been set up, along with scheduled hill tribe status to the hill-dwelling Bodos. Those Bodos who are dwelling in the hills, they will get scheduled hill tribe status, which gives them protection over their land. The tribal land will be protected. They'll also enjoy many privileges like reservation and subsidies, etc. The Bodo language has been recognized as an associate official language for the entire state. Previously, Bodo didn't have this recognition, whereas Assamese language was the state language, the official state language. So Bodo language now enjoys the status of associate official language across Assam, even in the non-Bodo districts. All the terrorists who surrendered, the militants, if they haven't committed brutal acts of terrorism, they have been rehabilitated by the government and brought back into mainstream. Those who have committed terror attacks, murders, killings, rapes, those who have been involved in brutal crimes, they are not spared. They will be punished. They will be arrested and they'll be punished. But those who are only involved in non-heinous crimes, if they have just been part of the organization, if they have just been indoctrinated, misled to work for the organization, they will be spared. They'll not be arrested. There'll not be cases against them. Rather, the government will help them in bringing them back to mainstream. Government will give them jobs. It will give them some compensation as well so that they can surrender and come back. But those who have committed brutal crimes like rapes, murders and kidnappings and terror attacks, they are being punished and prosecuted. So these are the big changes which have happened under the accord, and lot of financial incentives also has been given by the government. Lot of financial incentives have been announced, like for example, compensation of 5 lakh rupees for families which have lost family members because of the insurgency, a special package of 1500 crores which will be provided directly to BTC, that will reduce its financial dependency on the state. A package of 1500 crores has been given so BTC can look after its own funds and finances without depending heavily on the state government for financial support. Plus, the central government has promised to bring in better connectivity and better development to Bodo areas. And many elite institutions will be set up in the coming years. Elite institutions of higher education, like a central university, a national sports university, aims like medical institution for medical college and a hospital and research institution, and a NIT. All these elite universities and colleges will be set up to promote education and research and create opportunities for students. Right? This will bring outside students as well to the area, driving economic growth and economic activities. So all these projects have been proposed by India under the third Bodo Accord. Right? These facilities of higher education will be set up along with better connectivity for the region to drive tourism and to drive economic growth and opportunities in Bodo areas. So kindly remember the important points, at least the major points, around 7 or 8 points are there. So you can expect a question here. UPSC has not asked this topic yet. So UPSC might focus on this, even though it's from 2020. It might ask you to illustrate or critically examine the provisions of third Bodo Peace Accord. There is one concern, however, with regard to the accord. You might have noticed by now. The concern expressed is that the government seems to have made a lot of concessions to a brutal terrorist organization. A terror group which has terrorized the region, killed hundreds of people, threatened our integrity and sovereignty, right? Today has been given too many concessions. See, we have worked out peace accords with other insurgent groups as well. That's not the problem. The problem is with the concessions we have given. We have almost agreed to every demand, given a lot of financial support, even more autonomy, redrawn the boundaries as they have demanded. So there is a fear that this might set a wrong precedent. In a region affected by insurgency, if such concessions are given, right, the wrong message might go out. The message is that the more brutal you are, the government might give you more concessions. That is the wrong lesson other insurgents might take from this. They also might start resorting to brutal violence and even more extreme forms of insurgency, hoping that someday the government will negotiate with them and agree for all these concessions like the Bodos have managed to get. So this is one concern which experts have expressed. The positive side is that it definitely ends the armed conflict. It paves the way for peace and development, provides more autonomy. This is all great news. But there is a genuine concern that this could be a wrong precedent for other insurgent groups. They might believe that if you are more violent and more extreme, right, then government will keep giving concessions under 6th schedule. This is where the government should maybe strike a balance. Giving autonomy is not the problem. Having a peace process is not the problem. In fact, that is a way of conflict resolution. To resolve conflicts, you have to talk, you have to engage, right? Peace process is actually encouraged. Giving autonomy is also great. There's no problem with that. The problem is in giving concessions, especially financial concessions. If you're promising so much funds, promising all these projects, hoping that they'll end their insurgency, you might send a wrong message, right? Because money could be a big motivator for these groups. And the political autonomy you're granting will only add to it. So other groups might believe that if we are more violent, more brutal like NDFB, then tomorrow the government will negotiate eventually and we can also ask more concessions, right? So that is one concern which has come up. But otherwise, it has definitely helped in ending the insurgency, and it has brought stability to the Bodo areas. So this completes my discussion on Assam. We have covered all the different insurgencies based out of Assam. Is that clear? Now let's look at some questions. I'll take a look at your doubts. We don't have enough time to cover the next topic, but after the questions, we can just give an introduction, because the next topic is extremely important. Insurgency in Manipur. Until last year, the topic was not very important. I would cover this in hardly 15-20 minutes because it's a very old topic. Manipur had largely stabilized over the years. So I would just cover the history, the background as to what was Manipur's insurgency, what caused it, and how we managed to contain it. But given what has happened in the last few months, from April, May 2023, the topic becomes extremely important. The large-scale ethnic violence seen in Manipur this year, it has reopened the deadly wounds. The wounds of 1960s have been reopened. And right now, we are dealing with one of our worst security crises in the Northeast. Is that clear? So to understand this, we need a little time, but I can give you the introduction and then we can end. And in the next class, we will definitely wrap it up in complete detail. First, let's look at the questions. Any doubts related to Naga insurgency, Assam insurgency? Please ask. All right, keep it limited to these topics. Then another 10 minutes, we can get an introduction to Manipur and we can take it up in the next class. First question, Kishore is asking how Ulfa Independent came to an end. I didn't say Ulfa Independent came to an end. Ulfa Independent is still operating in Myanmar. Along the China-Myanmar border, Ulfa I, led by Paresh Barua, is still active. It's still an active group. That's why I made a mention of this. It's still an active group involved in attacks against India. Vishwa is asking, as Sir said, there is no peace process in Nagaland. What is the condition of current political and people situation in Nagaland? See, the peace process is with the insurgents. Otherwise, Nagaland in general is pretty stable compared to before, compared to 70s, 80s. That was the peak of insurgency and violence in Nagaland. Today, things are much better. As Isaac Muiwa has surrendered, the IM faction has surrendered, right? And we are in a peace process with them. The scale of violence has definitely gone down, all right? But however, crime is very high, organized crime. And these insurgents are involved in criminal activities. There is extortion taking place. There is large-scale drug trafficking, arms trafficking, right? That remains a concern for India. And the other factions which are still active, the Kaplan faction, that remains a threat. But otherwise, Nagaland is relatively stable compared to before. But organized crime by these insurgent groups is very, very prevalent, and that remains a threat, a concern for the security situation. Shweta is asking, what were the actions taken by Government of India against politicians who were involved in malpractice of electoral procedure? See, these cases were never investigated properly, right? These cases that came up in Assam of electoral malpractice, where illegal migrants were listed on the electoral roll, those cases were never investigated and no one was held accountable for it. That is why the resentment increased amongst the Assamese. That's why they rebelled and carried out the Assam agitation. Next, let's see. So Lakshana is asking, sir, regarding Assam and the today's situation, if there is a question, how can we elaborate the answer? See, today Assam has become very stable compared to before. The worst period in Assam was in 1970s, 1980s, right? Even till 1990s. Those 30 years, that was the worst period where Ulfa was very active, Assam agitation was going on, and NDFB was very active, and there were other smaller statehood insurgent movements by Dimasas and Karbi Anglongs. But today, in the last 15-20 years, right, Assam has become very stable. Most of the insurgencies have come to an end, right? And compared to before, Assam today is very, very stable. So if there is a question, that's what you will be explaining as well. Vivek is asking, associate official language means See, in every state there is one official state language, right? That language will get the main preferential treatment. In all government business, the state language will be used. Associate language would mean that some government documents will be translated to associate language as well, so people can easily read the documents. Government business will be conducted at least in Bodo areas with associate language. And when the government is, let's say, giving awards for the scholars of that language or providing funds for the protection of that language, right, the government will give more attention to associate languages. So you have a state language, and in some states where there are multiple languages, associate official language will also be recognized. So it means government business, where needed, can be conducted in the associate official language as well. Ganashyam is asking, instead of providing constitutional autonomy, can't we provide statehood to these areas? See, if you keep providing statehood to every movement, right, then tomorrow everybody in India will start asking for a separate state. So it's not practically possible, right? It might set a wrong precedent again. There are many statehood movements. You have the Gorkha land movement, right? There are many parts in India, like for example, Coorg in Karnataka. There are other parts in central and eastern India where there is a statehood movement. So if you keep providing statehood to everyone, how many states will you create? We are such a diverse country. So statehood is not the solution. Providing autonomy makes more sense, especially for tribal areas, for tribal communities. Constitutional autonomy is better than statehood. Statehood might weaken our integrity. If you keep on creating more states just because there are violent movements, then there will be no end to it. Every group, every community will ask for a separate state. Rashmi is asking, in the interview, what if a question is asked that if you are posted in Northeast, how will you handle the situation? How to give effective answer? That depends on the question, right? Depends on what specific question is asked. Let's say a broad question is asked on development of Northeast India. Point out the lack of development. Why the region didn't develop? What were the mistakes in governance before? Now, how are we improving? How have we tackled insurgency? How are we tackling the developmental problems? How are we improving connectivity? Let's say a question is specific to a particular insurgency, right, or to a peace accord. You have to bring those details into your answer. But always remember, when giving an answer in the interview, please be balanced. Don't be biased, right? Don't have any stereotypes. Don't have any affiliation to a political party or to any group or any community. Think like a neutral officer and imagine yourself in that position and provide the suitable answer for the question which has been asked. It's very important to be politically neutral. Divya is asking, there is scope for expansion of BTR in this new accord. Will it not have consequential impact on the state of Assam? No, not really. The redrawing is not a major redrawing. It's only a few villages here and there. Only a few Bodo villages will be included. Some non-Bodo villages will be excluded. So it won't have any major impact on Assam as such. And Bodo areas are part of Assam itself. They only have autonomy in that area where state powers are restricted in few subjects. So it will not have any impact on Assam. Divyanshi is asking, is today last class for internal security? No, how can it be the last class? We still have tomorrow, we have Saturday as well. We'll have a class on Saturday, Monday and Tuesday. We have enough classes to complete the syllabus. Harshita is asking, sir, still the illegal migration has not stopped, then why government is not conducting NRC in Assam every 5 years? Okay. See, first of all, regarding illegal migration from Bangladesh, the scale of illegal migration has reduced drastically. All right. Compared to 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. After 2009, after Sheikh Hasina took over, the extent of illegal migration has gone down by a very big margin. The BSF, which is guarding the Bangladesh border, gave this information and data to the parliament recently. There was a question which was asked on these lines as to how many illegal migrants have come, what is the scale of illegal migration today. So BSF submitted the reports and data to the parliament. Illegal migration was high from 1971 to 2009, when Bangladesh was backward. when it was under military rule and these oppressive regimes where growth and development were not being focused upon. That's when illegal migration was high because people didn't have opportunities. But now Sheikh Hasina has turned Bangladesh around. It's becoming a developing country. In 2 years, it will be officially designated as a developing nation, right? It has done much better than India in certain indicators of human development with regard to education, healthcare, and even microfinance. Bangladesh has done better than India. So as opportunities have improved in Bangladesh and standard of living has gone up, obviously the incentive for migrating to India illegally has also reduced. And also border security has improved. Border management has improved by both the sides. So compared to before, illegal migration has declined by a very big margin. Now, I'm not saying it has come to an end. It will never come to an end. When you have such a large boundary with porous gaps, illegal migration will be there, but the extent has gone down by a big margin. Now, your second point, why NRC is not done frequently? NRC can be a very controversial exercise. NRC has been done recently, right? In polity and governance, this topic will be covered, or in current affairs, it will be covered. In Assam agitation, right, when Assam agitation ended in 1984, it was brought to an end through an accord called Assam Accord. Government of India negotiated with the protesters, with all the groups that were protesting, and Assam Accord was finalized in 1984-85. Under the Assam Accord, government made a lot of promises. It promised that will improve border security, will check illegal migration. It also promised a commission to examine the backwardness of Assamese and provide reservation for them. And it also promised to conduct NRC again. The 1951 NRC will be updated. This promise was made under the Assam Accord. But no subsequent government took up NRC because it is very, very controversial. Because when you are verifying citizenship based on documents, based on a cutoff date, there can be many mistakes that will happen, right? Many people who are Indian citizens, they may not have the right documentation to prove that they and their family were in India before this cutoff date. So as a result, genuine Indian citizens might get excluded. There could be illegal migrants who have gotten hold of fake documents, or they've actually got genuine documents done. So illegal migrants might enter the list. They might prove their citizenship through documentation, and they might get added to the list. So NRC is inherently a problematic exercise. It can't be a foolproof exercise, right? There will be unfair exclusions, unfair inclusions. That is why governments held on to it. They didn't conduct the exercise given the sensitivity. Since the communal angle also exists, right? It could lead to a humanitarian crisis where few communities are targeted. They are excluded from the list by including other communities. So that is why NRC was not done. But recently, Assamese groups had approached Supreme Court, pointing out that Assam Accord promised NRC, but government has not conducted. So in 2012, the Supreme Court intervened and ordered the government of India and Assam to conduct NRC. So based on Supreme Court orders and under Supreme Court's observation, NRC was conducted. If any of you are from Assam, you will know that the exercise was conducted because NRC offices were opened everywhere. People had to go and submit documents to show that they and their family were in Assam before the given cutoff date. Is that clear? The cutoff date was 24th March 1971, a critical date in the history of South Asia, because that was the day Pakistani army launched Operation Searchlight, where Bengalis were targeted and a genocide was committed against them in East Pakistan. That is what triggered the refugee crisis into India. So that is why the cutoff date was chosen as the midnight of 24th March 1971. If you can prove that you were in India, you were in Assam before this date, you and your family were here with documents, if you can prove that, you are added to NRC, or else you'll be dropped, meaning you're an illegal foreigner. So this exercise was conducted for a few years. In 2017, the draft NRC list was published. All right. Guess how many people were excluded? Take a guess. If anyone knows, tell me if you know how many people got excluded from NRC in the draft list, in the initial draft. 7 lakh, 1.5 lakh. Kirtana has given the right answer. It is 40 lakh people. 4 million people got excluded in the first initial draft. Not all of them would be perfect, right? If it's a government exercise, a census like survey exercise, there will be plenty of mistakes done. If there are some local officials who are colluding with politicians, they might give this a communal angle and target the Muslims of the region, exclude them because they are branded, all of them are branded as Bangladeshi migrants. So 40 lakh people got excluded, and many reports showed that many of them were Indian citizens. Many Indians, many Assamese themselves got excluded. Many soldiers who have worked in the Indian army, they got excluded. Government officials, retired government officials were excluded. This is the fault with the exercise like NRC. So then the list was updated again. It was a draft list, so it was revised again. And final NRC was published in 2018. All right. Do you know how many have been excluded in the final list? In the final NRC, how many have been excluded? Bal Raju has given the right answer. Even Abhijit and Tensi, very good. 19 lakh people, 1.9 million. Right? That is the population of your Gaza Strip. If 1.9 million people are excluded, it means they are illegal foreigners according to NRC. But problem is many discrepancies have been noticed. Many Indian citizens have been added again in the list, and many illegal migrants, many Indians have been excluded. All right, and illegal migrants have been added in the list. So if the government acts on it, what is the next step? Once illegal foreigners are identified, what is your next step? Next step is that you give them a chance to again prove their citizenship. So the tribunals will be set up, foreigner tribunals. They're already there in Assam. So these people, 1.9 million who are excluded, they have to go to tribunals, give documents and explain why they are not able to get added to the list. They have to try and prove their citizenship. So the tribunals will decide whether they are Indians or not. So out of 1.9 million, let's say half of them get added and another half gets excluded, which is still a big number. Almost 1 million could still get excluded. Now, those who are finally excluded, they are your illegal foreigners according to the list, which means the government has to detain them. Can the government hold a million people in detention centers? Is it even possible? Our jails are overcrowded. We are not able to manage our prisons. How will you build detention centers and hold so many people? How will you look after them? Can you provide their basic human rights? Can you guarantee their fundamental rights? Even after you detain them, what will you do? Will you deport them to Bangladesh? That's the next question, right? Bangladesh will not accept them. Bangladesh will reject this. So that's why Bangladesh is opposing NRC, right? It affects our diplomatic ties as well. How will Bangladesh be convinced that these are Bangladeshis? If there are discrepancies in the exercise, how will Bangladesh be convinced that they came from Bangladesh, right? There are many problems here. Even if we try to deport, they will not accept them. And the biggest risk is that when you have excluded an entire group of people, a large group of people, they could become vulnerable for targeting, right? If you're making them stateless, they become stateless. Their citizenship goes away once the final detention is done. They could become vulnerable for being targeted by locals. And since there is a communal angle, right, it's the Muslims who might take the hit, as the local native tribal ethnic groups might target them like Bodo groups did. It could result in a massive humanitarian crisis, as it happened with Rohingyas, as it happened with Tamils in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, Myanmar, the exact same thing happened, where citizenship was taken away from a group of people. These people were excluded, treated as illegals and outsiders. That led to targeted violence against them because they'll not have any constitutional protection. They'll not have any basic rights and state protection. This is a recipe for disaster. All right. So it's better to let go. What has happened has happened. Going forward, we need to tackle illegal migration. And governments know this very well. That is why governments are slow in acting on NRC. Just because Supreme Court interfered and ordered, NRC was done. And now 1.9 million are excluded. And after that, government has not done anything. State and center both are silent. They know if they go ahead, it will become a big crisis. It could lead to a lot of unnecessary problems, which could breed even more security challenges. That is why India has not acted on the final NRC list. All right. So guys, these are the questions. Let me see if there is any new question. Okay. Yeah. So I think we can end the session for today. Let's meet again tomorrow. We'll finish this chapter. We have only few topics. We have Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura. Relatively, they are smaller topics. We'll wrap up Northeast insurgency and move on to the next chapters. Next, we have some very interesting topics actually, but they're all very small. But we'll try to cover them one by one in the few remaining classes that we have. So I think that's it for today. I hope you guys have understood everything. See, this chapter is a little complicated. I know many of you may not have the details, the background regarding Northeast India. So initially it might seem a little complex. That's why I'm going into the details. I have to explain the social issues, the demography. That's when you'll get the hold of this topic. In Manipur, for example, without explaining the ethnic issues, you can't understand what's happening, right? So it will be a little complex initially, but once you understand, once you attend the class, then revise, trust me, it will become simpler. All right. So let's meet again tomorrow. Let me know how the class went. I hope you understood everything. I hope you liked it. So take care. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.